boda boda, boda boda, popote tutatembea, boda boda, oh, tolipia fare, boda boda, foleni utongojea, boda boda.
Nakukamatia juu na kukamatia chini, watu wote wanajua na kukamatia mimi. Wanafiki wa Mbeya watakamatia nini? Acha waende watu wote, situkamatie ini. Stories za mapenzi si tunafaa, washasemaga mengi miaka kadhaa, na bado tuna trend usiku na saa. Sisi uko na Mnyamwezi kibana ba, kibana ba.
Habibi siri ndogo ndogo nifichie, kama nikikosa niambie, na nikipatia unisifie, nisifie babe. Habibi siri ndogo ndogo nifichie, kama nikikosa niambie, na nikipatia unisifie, nisifie. Sababu sina sababu, sijui nimependa nini, sina jawabu. Sijui mimi, sijui wewe wako boda boda, boda boda, boda, popote tutatembea, boda boda, oh, tolipia fare, boda boda, boda, foleni utongojea, boda boda, boda.
Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
I'm feeling something good tonight. Seems I'm about to lose my mind. We gotta set the mood tonight. Ich weiß, es bist du auch dabei. Fiesta. Something good tonight. Seems I'm about to lose my mind. We gotta set the mood tonight. Ich weiß, es bist du auch dabei. Show me your loco, go, make them the choco. Show me, don't let it go, don't let it go. Show me your loco, go, make them the choco. Don't let it go, don't let it go. Fiesta. Okay, you got it. Fiesta.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
It's 6 o'clock, Central Africa time. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much indeed. It's time to rise and shine right here on Channel Africa, where we bring you the African perspective. We're broadcasting live from our studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, on the internet at www.channelafrica.co.za. And you can also catch us on your mobile app. Just look for SABC Plus and then look for Rise and Shine on Channel Africa. Thanks for joining us. We have so much on the program, but to tell you what's coming up, I say good morning to Asanda, Beda.
Good morning, Ndoro. A great and beautiful new day. It's a Wednesday, the 13th of August. Thanks, of course, for joining us in this hour. Of course, we're together for the next 3 hours. But in this first one, we look at Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa, who's reiterated his country's commitment to international dialogue. And 36 soldiers, including a former regional governor, have been arrested for allegedly plotting a coup in Mali. Those stories and more will be coming up. Let's say good morning first for our news update. It will be the first one for Rise and Shine on this Wednesday. Here's Onele Nzinzi, and then following her will be Musibudi Makura with our sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and a very good morning to our listeners. At least 40 people have been killed in an attack on a camp for displaced people in Sudan's western Darfur region. The Abu Shauk Emergency Response Room said the assault was carried out by the Rapid Support Forces. The resistance committee in nearby Al Fashir city, made up of local citizens and activists, also reported the matter. Al Fashir, which came under intense attack as well in the last major foothold in Darfur for the army and its allies, which have been fighting the paramilitary RSF in the 2-year civil war. The conflict has triggered a humanitarian crisis, with the UN warning that families trapped in the besieged city faced starvation. An investigation by the British Army has found that some soldiers stationed at a controversial base in Kenya continue to use sex workers despite being banned from doing so. The report states that soldiers at the British Army Training Unit Kenya are using sex workers at a low or moderate level, adding that more work is needed to stamp out the practice. The investigation covered a period of more than 2 years, examining conduct at the base dating back to the year 2022. It was commissioned in the October 2024 year, following an investigation by ITV into the behavior of soldiers, including allegations that some army personnel were paying local women for sex. The General Industries Workers Union of South Africa has condemned recent incidents where some foreign nationals are prohibited from accessing healthcare in the country. Operation Dudula has been spearheading these operations in most parts of the country. The Department of Health has also spoken against the action. GIUSA President Mametlwe Sibei says stopping foreign nationals from accessing healthcare is xenophobic and takes away from the crisis in the country's health system.
These attacks are not only a violation of the most fundamental human rights, but a dangerous diversion from the real crisis in the healthcare system. A crisis created by neoliberal austerity, corporate looting and profiteering, corruption and mismanagement. It is true that the clinics, hospitals and other healthcare services in our working class communities are failing the poor.
The Judiciary Monitoring Group in South Africa, Judges Matter, say the sexual harassment policy would help reduce the act in the court's ecosystem. The group has welcomed the move by Chief Justice Mandisa Maya. The policy aims to safeguard the dignity, integrity and independence of the judiciary by rooting out sexual harassment within its ranks. Attorney and coordinator at the Judges Matters, Alison Tiley, says the policy also seeks to address the power dynamics that oftentimes make it hard for complainants to come forward.
This has been a long time in the making. What we are able to say based on policy is that it's not necessary for a complainant to immediately that sexual harassment occurs to say, stop, this is sexual harassment. It accepts that in the workplace where there are these power imbalances, the potential complainant may be in a situation where they can't immediately do that.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Sudan demolished Nigeria 4-0 in the Chan tournament, while Mando Duplantis breaks the pole vault record for a 13th time. Details of these and other stories coming up at 6:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
It's that time on the show where we give you the Africa Roundup. This is the segment of the show that helps you to get up to date with stories you may have missed from yesterday, making news in and around our continent, and as a way of throwing forward in terms of what we can expect in developing news on this new day. Today we start with Zimbabwe, where the president there, Emmerson Mnangagwa, has reiterated his country's commitment to international dialogue and cooperation as it campaigns for a non-permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council. As outgoing SADC chair, the country has played an active role in regional peace and security, particularly in the conflict-torn eastern DRC.
Zimbabwe has submitted its bid for a non-permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council for the period 2027 to 2028. Additionally, we have reinforced our country's commitment to global peace and security by becoming a founding member of the International Organization for Mediation. We look forward to sharing our experience in preventive diplomacy, peacemaking, and peacekeeping.
The UN has expressed deep alarm over reports of a large-scale attack on El Fasher, the besieged capital of North Darfur State, which has also struck the nearby Abu Shok displacement camp. Stefan Dujarric, the spokesperson for the UN Secretary General, tells us more.
The attack has been attributed by local sources to fighters from the Rapid Support Forces. According to them, at least 40 civilians have been killed within Abu Shuk and another 19 injured. In a statement released a short while ago, our acting humanitarian coordinator for Sudan, Sheldon Yett, said he unequivocally condemns all deliberate and indiscriminate attacks on civilians in the country. All parties to the conflict have a clear obligation under international humanitarian law to ensure the protection of civilians. Displacement camps and other places of refuge for civilians must not be targeted. And the fact that we have to repeat this almost every day is a tragedy unto itself.
The International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, has brought global aviation leaders to Durban, South Africa, for the Next Generation of Aviation Professionals Global Summit. The event unites governments, industry, educators, training institutions, and youth to tackle key challenges. ICAO Secretary General Juan Carlos Salazar has more.
Revolutionary technologies are reshaping our sector. Automation, artificial intelligence, and advanced air mobility are transforming our airspace. Digitalization and data analytics are enhancing operations. Sustainability solutions are driving our path to net zero emissions. This vast and evolving workforce requirement is precisely why the Next Generation of Aviation Program, or the NGAP, is a high-level priority under the ICAO's long-term strategic plan for the year 2050.
Now, Kenyan activists are trying to stop the opening of a luxury Ritz-Carlton safari lodge in the Masai Mara, warning that it will damage one of the world's most famous ecosystems. The lodge, which is set to open on Friday, offers tented suites with private decks overlooking a wild beast migration route at $3,500 per night per person.
But the Maasai Conservation Institute says the high-end lodge will damage one of the world's most renowned ecosystems, and Metame Olol Dapash, the institute's director, is suing to block it from opening. Dapash alleges the tourist site will obstruct a crucial migration corridor between Masai Mara and Tanzania's Serengeti.
That was the last crossing point. There are other places in the middle, but you cannot tell wildebeest today you are going to cross the Sun River from the middle or south of where you are, that kind of thing. This is a tradition, something they've done over the years, and that ought to have been respected.
His lawsuit also claims there's no evidence an environmental impact assessment was conducted. He filed a lawsuit against Ritz-Carlton, its owner Marriott, the project's local developer, and Kenyan authorities.
So that's how we come to the end of this Wednesday, the 13th of August edition of Africa Roundup. We'll do this again tomorrow after the 6 a.m. news on Africa Rise and Shine. Coming up, we'll delve deeper into the West African region of the continent in terms of what you need to be in the know on there. And we speak to a resident analyst today on Wednesdays. We speak to Dr. Matsanga, and Peter Ndoro will be spearheading that conversation. So stay with us.
Nkhanza zokhudza amuna ndi azimayi kapena kuti gender based violence GBV zikuononga mioyo komanso kuphwasula midzi zikuchitika m'manyumba, m'masukulu, malo ogwirira ntchito ndipo kwambiri mwakachetechete koma sizikuyenera kupitirira. Mukazimva yankhulani, ngati mwakhudzidwa funani chithandizo chifukwa kusachita chilichonse sikuthandiza. Mverani kuma wireless onse 14 a SABC kuchokera lachitatu pa 23 mwezi uno wa Julai kuti mumve zokambirana, malangizo, masewero, zionetsero za maphunziro ndi mafunso okhuza nkhanza za amuna ndi azimayi ndi akatswiri, anthu opulumuka ku nkhanzazi, kukhazikitsa lamulo komanso dziko lonse lokhudzidwa ndi nkhanzazi. Zonsezi pa wireless yomwe mumayikonda ya SABC. Imbirani pa nambala 0800 428 428 kuti munene za nkhanzazi kapena kupeza chithandizo. Nkhanza zokhuza amuna ndi azimayi zimatha ndi inu. Uthenga ukufikani kuchokera ku SABC.
9 to 12 midday Central African Time. On the Move with Palisa Tau and Benjamin Mushata.
Should influencers be expected to be impactful in society? If there is a social or societal conversation that goes up, should we be waiting eagerly to hear what the influencers have to say?
They are more than just entertainers. They are thought leaders to some certain degree. They influence culture. They influence people's thought processes. They set trends. They shape opinions of people. And the sad reality is, although a lot of them don't want to accept it, I think we're getting better with them realizing that embarking in that journey and in that space comes with a certain level of responsibility.
I see it differently in that, professionals are already good at their job, but there is an optionality that they might have to use the position that they hold in society to be able to deliver a message. This year you made the example of actors and actresses. So the same could apply to a sportsman. Just because someone's good at soccer doesn't mean that they have to have an influence over society from a specific standpoint.
Keeping you on the know and on the move. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's time now for us to take a look at some of the stories making headlines in West Africa. Now, that's a region where there's been a week of high-stakes developments, from terrorism trials in Burkina Faso, political crackdowns in Mali, and election tensions in Ivory Coast, to Niger's moves to tighten control over its gold and high-profile disputes over the world's biggest Mars rock. Well, Mali also celebrates the return of Timbuktu's priceless manuscripts after 13 years in storage, and arrests of soldiers accused of plotting against the government. What does all this mean? To help us unpack all of this and what it means for the region, we're now joined by political analyst and conflict resolution expert, Dr. David Matsanga. Dr. Matsanga, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us on Rise and Shine.
Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Peter Ndoro. And good morning, South Africa, the giant of Africa. Wake up. Let's go and work for Africa.
Amen. Let's begin in Burkina Faso. We see there 13 people sentenced to life in prison over a 2018 attack on the French embassy and army headquarters, with more than 60 others receiving long sentences. How significant do you think this verdict is for the junta's fight against jihadist violence?
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to commend the head of state of Burkina Faso, Captain Traoré, for his Pan-Africanism, the sense of Pan-Africanism that we have seen rekindled. the hopes of millions and millions of Africans, that at least there is someone who can stand up and speak for them. The sentencing means quite a lot because there have been several people criticizing the government of Burkina Faso for abuse of human rights, or they saying they're against the French or whatever it is. This means there is rule of law taking shape in that country. And indeed, there is rule of law. There is no mess like any other place that you see in Africa where there is a mess, where people have taken law in their hands, kidnapping people like the bigger one across West Africa in ECOWAS in Nigeria. So in Burkina Faso, people are strict. They take you to court. If the court releases you, you go home. If the court says you go to serve sentence, you serve sentence without interference. That younger man does not interfere at all.
All right. I suppose a big question, though, is this attack took place in 2018, and that given over half of Burkina Faso's 26,000 conflict deaths occurred since 2015, happened in the last 3 years, do these convictions help restore public confidence in the state's ability to protect its citizens?
Yes, they do, because you know that there is one thing that you must do. Everybody has discredited military regimes. A military regime, they have tried to discredit it. African Union has banned it from its meetings. This is why I've been saying we must build back credibility. There's public credibility. There is a push for a fight against terrorism in Burkina Faso. You can feel it on the streets of Ouagadougou. You can feel it in other cities that someone is doing something to fight terrorism. Unlike the states of Nigeria, where everybody is kidnapping everyone at any time, any minute, demanding money. You can't feel anything, but in Burkina Faso, it brings back confidence, Peter.
Let's go to Mali now. 36 soldiers there, including a former regional governor, were arrested for allegedly plotting against the government. What does this reveal about divisions within the military and the junta's hold on power in Mali?
There is something creeping in, and you don't lose hope. You yourself, you know, the French never give up. French people and the French soldiers never give up toppling other governments that they feel they are not happy with. They have tried several attempts on General Gota. They want him out because it is the Mali is the gateway for all the problems, for all the trade, for everything, like the former Sahara Trans-Sahara trade through all those capital cities into Carthage and Tunis up there to the Mediterranean Sea. It has been blocked because they have nothing. The French were surviving on Mali for a long time by fueling insurgents, by even at one time even being in bed with terrorists. We have now seen what is going on around the world. You can see what is taking place in Gaza. It's not very good at all. You can see every place. So this is not the first attempted coup. This is not even the first and the last. There will be very many. So all what these leaders would do, some of us who have had audience with some of them, we tell them you have to watch, don't sleep, watch, have one eye on the other side. The French could come back and topple you and install a government in their favor.
So the French is one side of this story. Another might be people are saying that, look, yes, there are military juntas that have taken over some of these West African countries, but the stories are slightly different. Burkina Faso is one, Mali is another, and we're seeing there figures like the former Prime Minister Moussa Mara also detained. Is that an indication that maybe the democratic transition is closing there?
Democratic transition to where? Peter, I've told you politics. We took over wrong political systems of Europe. We have not yet reached a level Peter, the only country in Africa that has reached a level where people vote and go home without a stone, without killing one another is South Africa. Thank you very much. Ghana, thank you very much. Senegal, thank you very much. Liberia, thank you very much. Which other country, tell me, in Africa where people, once they hear the word elections, and Tanzania, yes, once you hear elections, people vote and go home and listen to results. It's only you people in Africa, in the entire African continent, where people vote and go back home. The whole of Africa, when you hear about the elections in Nigeria, you better prepare a machete because someone is going to come and kill you. So which democracy are you talking about? Peter, Africa must find its own democratic principles. Look at yourselves and find other solutions. This one of democracy of competition in Africa creates more deaths on the streets than democracy itself.
Okay, then let's go to Ivory Coast, where we're seeing protests erupting over the exclusion of Laurent Gbagbo, Tidjane Thiam, and other opposition leaders in the October election. What does that say about the state of democracy in Côte d'Ivoire?
No, I have just told you that is it. Look at that guy. Look at Ouattara. You and I, we have come across Ouattara several times. You remember you as one of the senior journalists on the South African soil. We have seen Ouattara. Ouattara himself is not from Ivory Coast. And I want to prove him to say he's from Ivory Coast. He's from Burkina Faso. He took over power. He created a war. He took Babugo to court. I struggled. Babugo in the ICC. He's out. Now, when he comes out, he knows that he lied. Even God knows he lied. The French stole him. Now he has kicked other people out. He said they are not Ivorians. They are not Côte d'Ivoire people. But he himself is not from Côte d'Ivoire. Let him go to Burkina Faso if that is the type of politics he's looking for. But let me come to one thing. I told you, Peter. Politics, which democracy in Africa are you talking about? You see this guy knocks off all opponents, then he says, at least, and I've made it very clear on this television, on your radio station, but people watching me. In my country, President Museveni does not remove opponents from the ballot paper. President Museveni allows you to come to the ballot paper. They count your votes, but not to eliminate you, not through technicalities. That is the truth. And I give a credit where it is due. I don't succumb. I think you know I'm the longest political opponent who has been there since 1982 against His Excellency. But when it comes to politics of the vote, he allows you to come and you are eaten by the vote. But Ouattara is doing nonsense. What politics are you talking about, Peter Ndoro? There's no politics, no democracy in there, in Ivory Coast. That is another coup in making. And I've been telling you that.
My concern, and I wonder if we shouldn't be worried about this. I mean, the last time we had Ouattara versus Gbagbo, there was a civil war in the country. Can these protests escalate?
That's why I'm telling you there's a coup coming. I'm a student of International Institute of Strategic Study, life member, not a student, a member of Chatham House. How you think I can't see there's something wrong coming there? There is something coming in Ouattara. Ouattara is just a simple French mall installed in Côte d'Ivoire. It's not supposed to be there. It was installed backed by the French. I and Mbeki were the last people to leave Abidjan with Chisano. We know exactly what Ouattara did, what the French told us to get out of the hotel. Mbeki is there, still alive. We know. But God does not lie. God always comes back to hit back at the French. The mall they created. They took Babugo. I struggled with Babugo case as if I'm from Ivory Coast until I saw Ocampo trying to fix Babugo for nothing. And simply because the French own ICC. Peter Ndoro is a long story. Let there be a warning.
Right.
That's a civil strife coming again, and we shall have Abidjan going down.
All right, Mali has welcomed back Timbuktu's treasured manuscripts that had been hidden in Bamako since Islamist attacks in 2012. What's the significance, do you think, of their return for Malian identity and cultural pride?
This is historical pride for Africa, the entire trans-Saharan trade, the triangle trade. You remember the trade from Europe to those places through the port Carthage. Some of the younger men who don't know what Tunis was called Carthage, the capital city of the northern Mediterranean Sea, where you come, you carry gold, salt, whatever you have carried goes through that city. And that city is monumental, is UNICEF, it is educational. United Nations have declared it as one of the wonders of the world with manuscripts. So terrorism had killed that city. And Gota has fought back and restored peace in that city. It is very good sign that everything is coming back to normal, and we shall be soon visiting that city as Africans and the younger generation to see what our founding fathers were doing in Africa.
Fascinating story. Niger is investigating how the world's largest Mars rock found on its soil was sold at an auction in New York for over $5 million. What does this case reveal about Africa's vulnerability to losing valuable heritage and resources?
Peter Ndoro, again in Africa, and let the Africans hear me and hear my voice. I always tell them, you have lost, nobody talks for you. Don't we have a department in African Union globaling money every day that it keeps our heritage? It looks at Africa. It is not there. They are in Addis Ababa here, eating money, eating dollars every day. They should protect Africa. A spokesman of African Union is the chairperson of Africa. You stand, if I were the chairperson of African Union, Dr. Matsanga, I would walk like on Indian Ocean. I would walk on Atlantic Ocean, walking, saying, I represent Africa. This guy we selected is just picking dollars every month, flying, is even dwarfed by the problems, by difficulties, by his own imagery. He's not seen. We should be speaking for Africa, not each country going to speak on its own. We should be protecting Africa. Trump is harassing Africa with tariffs. Nobody is talking. Nobody is coming up to say, no, this is not very good. No African leader should go to that place. For example, African leaders, next month, you are going to see them running to New York to spend our little money. For what? This man does not want us to even have money. You are running to give him money. Send your ambassadors to make speeches in the UN. That is the Africa that Nyerere wanted. That is the Africa that Sekou Toure wanted. That is the Africa Nkrumah wanted. That is the Africa Jomo Kenyatta wanted. That's the Africa Obote wanted. Gabriel Nasser wanted that type of... Amina Kabura. Look, Mandela would say, what is going on? But
Right.
here, look, our stone is taken. Somebody wants you, sells it while you are seeing, and here, don't go near it. Don't go near it. Now they took it, then they don't go near it. Then they sell it at 5 million. We are at a very dangerous situation as Africans. We don't have a spokesman.
Dr. Matsanga, it's always great talking to you. Thank you. Your insights always appreciated on our program. Thanks for your time, and we'll chat again next week.
Very much, Peter. Good morning.
Thank you. That's Dr. Matsanga, a political analyst, as well as a expert in conflict resolution, speaking to us about what's happening in West Africa. And it's not always a great story, unfortunately, on the continent. But one hopes that things will start to move in the right direction by and large. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Onele Nsinsi. Good morning.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The Democratic Republic of Congo Army has accused the M23 rebels of carrying out multiple attacks in eastern DRC, which it says violates agreements signed in Washington and Doha. The army has warned that it reserves the right to respond to provocation. An investigation by the British Army has found some soldiers stationed at a controversial base in Kenya continue to use sex workers despite being banned from doing so. And one person has died of burns in a fire north of Madrid in Spain as wildfires continue to engulf a number of countries in Europe. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's get our full sports bulletin as we get our details in the world of sports. Here's Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning from the Sports Desk. Your first bulletin for the morning will start here. Sudan led up the CHAN 2024 tournament with a performance that will be remembered long after the group stages dust settles. So in a commanding 4-0 demolition of Nigeria, Kwesi Appiah's men sent a clear message. They are not in East Africa to simply make up the numbers. The result not only sealed Sudan's place as serious contenders, but also brought an abrupt end to Nigeria's dream of lifting the trophy for the first time since the tournament's inception in 2009. So Kwesi Appiah, the former Ghanaian national team coach, couldn't hide his satisfaction at the final whistle. What that means is that Sudan will now eye a top place, Sudan now eye a top of a table showdown with Senegal, while Nigeria will seek redemption in their last match of the group stages of the CHAN tournament, still hoping, of course, to make it out of the group stages and into the quarterfinals. On to some cricket news now. The Proteas cricket team have levelled the 3-match T20 international series against Australia thanks to a comprehensive victory in the second match in Darwin yesterday. The Proteas beat the hosts by 53 runs. Sent in to bat first, the visitors made 218 for the loss of 7 wickets. Now, Deval Brevis came of age with an unbeaten 125, which is the highest ever individual T20 score for South Africa. He reached 3 figures of only from 41 balls with 9 fours and 5 sixes. It was also the second fastest century for the Proteas in this format. Australia were then bowled out for 165 in the 18th over of their innings. The series decider will be played in Cairns in northern Queensland this coming Saturday. On to some boxing news now. Smangele Hadebe is set to make history as the first South African female boxer to challenge for the WBC Africa flyweight title. The 2023 reigning female boxer will face off a historic fight on the 30th of August in Johannesburg. Hadebe, who is ranked number 1 in Africa by BoxRec, will face the undefeated Nigerian boxer Olympio Posi Kehide Solomon in the vacant WBC Africa flyweight title fight. Hadebe's manager Colleen McAusland says this is a great for South African boxer.
This is great for South African boxing, female boxing, that's for sure. You know, we need this in our country. We need to put our females on the map. And how much better that she's fighting in South Africa. Because when our girls go abroad, it's not easy. You know, when you fight abroad, you're already 40% chance of not winning the fight. You know, all the odds are stacked up against you. All the judges come from that country. It's usually not fair. When Smash fought for WBC in Mexico, there was not one neutral judge. They were all from Mexico.
McAusland says this event is a huge achievement and will also help the marketing of female boxing in South Africa.
is a great achievement for women in boxing. You know, it's what sponsors need to see and potential sponsors need to see is more women in boxing. Tournaments happening, and what a great way to start with Smash as the forerunner in the series that's starting. You know, we do see the tide is changing for women in boxing. The momentum is growing nicely. It's taken years of blood, sweat and tears to get where we are, but eventually our voices have been heard and, change is happening.
And finally, Armand Duplantis broke the men's pole vault world record for a 13th time and third time this year with a clearance of 6.29 meters at the Hungarian Grand Prix. The 25-year-old double Olympic as well as world champion cleared 6.28 meters at the Stockholm Diamond League meeting in June. But he has surpassed this figure with his second attempt in Budapest on Tuesday. Duplantis first broke the world record, which was held by Frenchman Ronald Villeni of 6 years in February of 2020 with a 6.17 meter clearance in Poland. So come the Saturday, he competes at the Silesia Diamond League meet in Poland, where he also broke the world record last year. So we're anticipating that he will likely break that world record this coming weekend. Well, that's a wrap from the sports desk at this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. Back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126 and we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am,
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with the community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Right, let's take a first look at what's been happening on the business front. And at the business desk this morning, we say good morning to Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. French mining group Eramet has appointed an executive, Clement Jacquemil, to oversee mineral processing in Gabon. The move comes after the West African country seeks to end exports of unrefined manganese and boost local processing. Gabon's government announced at the end of May that it would ban the export of raw manganese from January 2029, joining other West African states in seeking to capture more value from their mining resources. Jacquemil was previously Deputy Chief Operating Officer in charge of manganese ore. South Africa's Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Pax Dau, says a task team has been formed as a direct point of contact for companies affected by 30% tariffs imposed on the country. Dau was speaking at a joint media briefing with Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen in Pretoria yesterday.
Cabinet has endorsed the economic response package that includes the establishment of an export desk, which serves as a direct point of contact for affected companies.
Independent economist Alice Kruger says South Africa's muted economic growth is resulting in negative employment outcomes. This, as the latest data released by Stats SA shows that unemployment increased from 32.9% in the first quarter to 33.2% in the second quarter of 2025. The data shows that although 19,000 new job opportunities were created in the second quarter, the labor force increased by 159,000. The data shows that according to the expanded definition, unemployment decreased from 43.1% in the first quarter to 42.9% in the second quarter. Kruger comments.
So this is really, I would say, negative news. It shows us that with an economy growing at, say, 0.6% quarter on quarter in the second quarter, it is way too low to sustain our labour force, and it is way too low to make a dent in our unemployment rate.
The African Civil Aviation Commission has called on African leaders to create new opportunities for the next generation in the aviation sector. The Commission made this call at the third Next Generation of Aviation Professionals Global Summit at the Durban ICC in South Africa. The three-day event started yesterday, and the Commission's Secretary General Funke Adeyemi had this to say.
The world of global aviation needs our African youth. ICAO tells us that over the next 20 years, aviation globally is going to almost triple in its size.
Ford Motor Company is recalling 103,174 vehicles in the U.S. due to a safety issue with damaged axle hub splines. The recall was initiated because the affected vehicles may experience a rollaway when placed in park without the parking brake applied. The damaged hub splines could also cause a loss of drive power while the vehicle is in motion. Let's have a look at financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is at 1,000 naira 535. Botswana is 13 pula 33. Kenya, the dollar is 128 shilling 429. Zambia 23 kwacha 14. BRICS countries, the dollar in Brazil is at 5 real 42. Russia 79 rubles 58. India 87 rupees 63. China 71.18. South Africa 17 rand 65 cents. $1 is 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,350, platinum at $1,332 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil $66.09 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Our G20 fact for this Wednesday: did you know that the G20 was upgraded to the level of heads of state or government in the wake of the global economic and financial crisis of 2007 and in 2009, when it became apparent that the necessary crisis coordination would only be possible at the highest political level. Since then, the G20 leaders have met regularly, and the G20 has become the premier forum for international economic cooperation. And that's our G20 fact for this morning of the 13th of August.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality and sustainability.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation is pleased to announce the launch of a new self-registration platform. Vendors or suppliers wishing to do business with the SABC can self-register on our internally developed platform. Vendors or suppliers are able to access this platform on our website, www.sabc.co.za/SABC, under e-tenders or self-register at etender.sabc.co.za, and you can follow the prompts from there. Visit also SABC social media pages for more details.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
The Third International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, Next Generation of Aviation Professionals Global Summit is underway in the city of Durban, South Africa. Co-hosted by the South African Civil Aviation Authority, SACA, under the leadership of the country's Department of Transport, this summit is a pivotal event for the aviation community to collaboratively secure the future of aviation talent. Sisi Sikhalo is there and has more on the story.
The African Civil Aviation Commission has made projections that under the umbrella of the single African air transport market, over the next 30 years, African aviation is going to grow by 3 times. The Commission made the remarks to Channel Africa on the sideline at the 3-day ICAO Next Generation of Aviation Professionals Global Summit. The summit has brought together role players in the aviation sector from across the African continent and globally. The African Civil Aviation Commission, which is a specialized agency of the African Union on matters of civil aviation, says their predictions is that they are going to have over 300 new routes connecting African cities over the next 30 years. The Secretary General of the Commission, Adefunke Adeyemi, says they are also projecting to carry an additional 66 million passengers over that period of time, and all of that will lead to an additional contribution of $4.2 billion. She says they are looking at young people to grab the opportunities.
Of course, as we said all of this, we are here at the ICAO Next Generation of African Professionals Global Summit. And of course, we cannot have this conversation without taking into account the next generation as well, because they will be not just the users, but the drivers of African and global aviation in the future.
It would seem that this growth that Africa is expected to enjoy is not only in the African continent, but globally. The Secretary General of the International Civil Aviation Organization, Juan Carlos Salazar, says they predict that the air transport will continue to grow rapidly, and by 2050, the number of passengers is expected to triple worldwide.
We are foreseeing that there is need for a growing number of skills professionals. Only the numbers that we have presented today are referring to licensed personnel, so the technical personnel that has licenses issued by governments around the world. And we expect in the next 10 years or so, close to 2.6 million professionals worldwide that will be required, including from cabin crew and operational personnel to technicians, to air traffic controllers, pilots, etc.
South Africa's Minister of Transport, Barbara Crecy, has put ambitious targets for the industry in South Africa. Their target is reaching 42 million passengers and 1.2 million tons of air freight through the Airports Company of South Africa network of airports by 2029.
Well, AXA has got a major capital build program that they want to roll out over the next 3 years. It includes a new cargo terminal at OR Tambo International Airport, as well as upgrading passenger facilities at our other networks of airports. Of course, we work a lot with other departments in government. Minister Dalil in the tourism sector is very responsible for bringing visitors to our country. Obviously, Minister Tao in trade and industry also is helping us to position aviation as an enabler of the African free trade area.
The second day of the summit will discuss rebranding aviation and breaking barriers in aviation careers. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sikhalo in Durban, South Africa.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Vue d'Afrique avec Joël Mouteba.
Cette peur d'un point de non-retour nucléaire suffit-elle selon vous à légitimer une telle offensive, Monsieur Talazi?
Absolument pas du tout. Cela fait plus de 30 ans que l'Israël crie haut et fort sur les toits, où il veut se faire entendre que l'Iran serait à 1 an pour obtenir l'arme nucléaire. Parfois, l'Iran serait à 6 mois. Parfois, l'Iran serait à 2 semaines pour obtenir son arme nucléaire. Et curieusement, jusqu'à ce jour, il n'y a toujours aucune preuve que l'Iran a obtenu cette arme nucléaire en dépit des déclarations d'Israël et de certaines puissances parfois.
Vue d'Afrique. Du lundi au vendredi de 15h à 16h, temps universel.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
While still welcoming efforts by the United States towards ending Russia's war against Ukraine, the European Union's leaders have asserted that the people of Ukraine must have the freedom to decide their future and warned that a path to peace cannot be decided without the Ukraine. The EU made its position known in a statement issued earlier on Tuesday in preparations and parameters for a summit between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, which takes shape ahead of the Friday meeting in the US state of Alaska. Suggestions from Trump that there would be land swaps between Kyiv and Moscow as part of future peace arrangements were definitely dismissed by Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky after it emerged that Putin could agree to a ceasefire in return for major territorial concessions by Ukraine. Sherwin Bryce-Peace picks up this story from New York.
As anticipation builds for a meeting between Presidents Trump and Putin, the White House has signaled that they are planning for the Friday summit without the attendance of Ukraine's president at Russia's request, while a possible trilateral summit is something the U.S. remains open to. Listen to President Trump.
This is really a feel-out meeting, a little bit. And President Putin invited me to get involved. He wants to get involved. I believe he wants to get it over with. Now, I've said that a few times, and I've been disappointed because I'd have like a great call with him, and then missiles would be lobbed into Kiev or some other place, and you'd have 60 people laying on a road dying. But I'm going to meet with him. We're going to see what the parameters are. And then I'm going to call up President Zelensky and the European leaders right after the meeting, yeah. And I'm going to tell them what kind of a deal. I'm not going to make a deal. It's not up to me to make a deal.
European Union leaders are expected to hold a virtual summit with Trump Wednesday to focus on pressure options against Russia, addressing issues related to Ukraine's territories seized by Russia, security guarantees for Ukraine, and how the potential peace talks might play out. EU spokesperson Ariana Podesta.
Right now, we are focusing on the preparation of this meeting. We will have calls tomorrow among leaders. The position is clear. We welcome the efforts by President Trump to reach peace for Ukraine, a peace that is just and lasting and respects sovereignty and territorial integrity. And in this sense, we are working with Ukraine to make sure that this is kept in mind in the meeting of Friday. Anything else is pure speculations at this stage.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky claimed Tuesday that Russia was merely using Friday's summit to buy time and was preparing for new offensive operations, while balking at the notion of territorial swaps.
President Donald Trump announced preparations for his meeting with President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, very far away from this war, which is raging on our land, against our people, and which can't be ended without us, without Ukraine. Of course, we will not reward Russia for what it has perpetrated. The Ukrainian people deserve peace, but all partners must understand what a dignified peace is. The answer to the Ukrainian territorial question already is in the Constitution of Ukraine. No one will deviate from this, and no one will be able to. Ukrainians will not give their land to the occupier.
A senior Kremlin aide, Yuri Yushakov, confirmed the Friday meeting that would focus on achieving a long-term peaceful resolution to the war.
Alaska and the Arctic are regions where the economic interests of our countries intersect, and there are clear prospects for implementing large-scale, mutually beneficial projects. Of course, the presidents themselves will undoubtedly focus on discussing options for achieving a long-term peaceful resolution to the Ukrainian crisis. In conclusion, I would like to note that in the coming days, Moscow and Washington will certainly devote themselves to the most active and intense preparations for the practical and political aspects of the Alaska summit. This will evidently be a challenging process, but we will engage in it actively and energetically.
As Europe and Ukraine seek to shape White House positions ahead of Friday's Alaska meeting, as explained by research fellow at the Ukraine Forum at Chatham House, Yaroslava Barbieri.
European leaders are currently trying to strike a tricky balance between trying to keep the US on board because they are still dependent on US military assistance to some degree. They are only now gradually trying to bolster their defense capabilities and acquiring more independence from the US security umbrella. But on the other hand, indeed, they understand that they might have that there will be tensions between the US position and European leaders' position on what a durable ceasefire and acceptable terms for ending the war in Ukraine might be. So that is the tricky balance that European leaders are currently trying to navigate, and Ukraine is fully aware of this.
Expectations of a deal to emerge from the Alaska meeting remain slim, given the absence of Ukraine's leader from the summit, with President Zelensky emphatic that no decisions concerning Ukraine's future and the security of its people could be made without Ukraine's participation, as he pressed for sanctions to be strengthened against Russia as a pressure tactic to get Moscow to address substantive issues on ending the war. The United Nations has also insisted that any peace arrangement be in line with the UN Charter, General Assembly resolutions, and international law. I'm Sherwin Bryce Pease in New York.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Well, it's just a few seconds before 7 o'clock Central African time, and that's when we enter the second hour of Rise and Shine, coming to you live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. And you can find us on at Channel Africa 1. That's our handle across our various social media platforms. We are on X, we are on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on TikTok, as well as YouTube. And on YouTube, we stream live every morning, 6 till 9. My name is Asanda, Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Thanks indeed for joining us for this second hour of the program. And we've got quite a few things that we're going to be looking at this hour, actually. Unemployment in South Africa is up to 33%, and that's always, of course, the formal unemployment figure. They say that the proper figures, well over 50, nearly 60% of people. We'll have to take a look at that. But there's a civil society organization called Black Sash that's very concerned and saying that most South Africans now need some kind of basic income support, and we'll be unpacking what that means. And also there's a water summit that's taking place in Cape Town, and that's going to involve some heads of state even and ministers in that sector, all part of the G20 Summit Forum that's been taking place this year. So we'll be unpacking those and other stories in the next hour. But right now we begin with the news, and Onele Nsinsi is at the desk.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The Democratic Republic of Congo Army has accused the M23 rebels of carrying out multiple attacks in eastern DRC, which it says violate agreements signed in Washington and Doha. The army has warned that it reserves the right to respond to provocations. The statement comes a day after the M23 rebels accused Congolese forces of mobilizing more troops and violating the terms of a declaration of principles signed last month in Doha, voicing support for a permanent ceasefire. The Qatar-hosted talks were intended to run parallel to a mediation effort by U.S. President Donald Trump's administration involving Congo and Rwanda. An investigation by the British Army has found that some soldiers stationed at a controversial base in Kenya continue to use sex workers despite being banned from doing so. The report states that soldiers at the British Army Training Unit Kenya are using sex workers at a low to or moderate level, adding that more work is needed to stamp out the practice. The investigation covered a period of more than 2 years, examining conduct at the base dating back to the year 2022. It was commissioned in October 2024 following an investigation by the ITV into the behavior of soldiers, including allegations that some army personnel were paying local women for sex. The General Industries Workers Union of South Africa has condemned recent incidents where some foreign nationals are prohibited from accessing healthcare in the country. Operation Dudula has been spearheading these operations in most parts of the country. The Department of Health has also spoken against the actions. KEUSA President Mamitlwe Sibei says stopping foreign nationals from accessing healthcare is xenophobic and takes away from the crisis in the country's healthcare system.
These attacks are not only a violation of the most fundamental human rights, but a dangerous diversion from the real crisis in the healthcare system. A crisis created by neoliberal austerity, corporate looting and profiteering, corruption and mismanagement. It is true that the clinics, hospitals and other healthcare services in our working class communities are failing the poor.
The South African anti-migrant group Operation Dudula, meanwhile, says it will continue blocking foreign nationals from accessing public healthcare services in the country. This follows the release of its members who were arrested at the Lillian Ngoyi Clinic in Soweto, south of Johannesburg, after questioning patients about their nationalities and demanding identity documents. Operation Dudula President Zandile Dabula says foreign nationals need to pay for health services.
We do not want foreigners to be accessing our public healthcare facilities. If they need medical attention, they're more than welcome to go to private facilities and pay for them. Now, if we have a public facility that has a method of payment and tracking who this person is, which means that the person has come to the country legally, then we will not have a problem as long as they're going to pay for the services they receive. We don't have a problem.
Okay.
But if we are illegal, we don't want you near our clinics.
And lastly, one person has died of burns in a fire north of Madrid in Spain, as wildfires continue to engulf a number of countries in Europe. This, as much of the continent is experiencing a heat wave. Thousands have been evacuated. The BBC's Guy Hetko.
It is down in the south, in the Guadalquivir Valley, where we're expecting to see the highest temperatures today. But the other place which is on red alert is up in the Basque Country in the north. They are on red alert and they're expecting to see temperatures of up to 40 Celsius today. That is extremely unusual. And we're expecting this heat wave to continue over the coming days, possibly with a hiatus tomorrow. We're told that temperatures in many areas could drop tomorrow before then rising again.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, South Africa defeat Australia by 53 runs in the second T20 match, while Nigeria demolished 4-0 by Sudan. Details of these and other stories coming up at 7:30.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
South Africa's Minister of Small Business Development, Stella Ndabeni, has emphasized the limited participation of small businesses in both regional and global markets. Speaking at the 2025 Pakistan-South Africa Trade Summit, she identified key barriers such as limited access to finance, inadequate infrastructure, and also the shortage of effective business development agencies as major challenges. Innocent Simusa picks up the story for us.
Pakistan is known to be a global player in textile and leather, while South Africa has a robust commercial infrastructure and regional distribution channels. The chairman of Pakistan-South Africa Trade Federation, Rafiq Memo, says effective trade zones, co-branding and professional sourcing arrangements can expand market access between the two countries.
Foreign ministers here, trade ministers here, they can make the mechanism between the government of South Africa. So we will raise our issue, this tariff issue, so we can make the policy how we can bring the goods from Pakistan and we can put in the Africa market.
He did, however, point out ongoing issues related to visa application processes.
Secondly, sir, we have a lot of challenges in the visas. Our South Africa High Commission in Islamabad, they are giving the visa but very small and short periods. And when I was in Pakistan, I spoke to the High Commission in Islamabad. So we are facing these kind of challenges. Our businessmen, they want to visit here, but they get very small limit visas.
South Africa's Minister of Small Business Development, Stella Ndabeni, has reaffirmed the pivotal role small businesses hold in strengthening the nation's economy.
We're growing economies, we're transforming economies, but we are also creating jobs. Because yes, the big firms are contributing to tax and the many other important things that they're doing, but jobs are created by smaller enterprises. And yet, the participation of small enterprises in regional and global value chains remain limited.
The minister went on to detail the obstacles facing the sector, including structural and financial barriers.
Limited access to finance, the poor infrastructure, the lack of business development services, fragmented markets, and regulatory complexities. Those are what are really hammering the participation or the meaningful participation of smaller enterprises in the global and regional value chains. We are currently, like Pakistan, we're navigating a complex global landscape that is marked by the geopolitical volatility that I spoke about.
She urged delegates to maintain their commitment to South Africa through a sustained investment and partnership.
We are the gateway to the African market of more than 1 billion consumers. We have good infrastructure, we've got financial systems, whether you're talking about aviation, we've got stable leadership. Even though we're in the GNU and most people have really had concerns to say, will there be policy stability? And you may have seen that even though at times we have minor differences, but we're able to rise up and find each other. And this is what makes us to be unique. Because stability is important for anyone who wants to invest. And therefore, we are calling upon yourselves to increase your investment. As I said, we are a gateway to Africa.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samosa in Johannesburg.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa has tabled a revised trade offer to the United States in a bid to ease tensions following the 30% tariffs Washington has slapped on local exports. Speaking to the media on Tuesday, together with his counterpart from the Agriculture Department, Minister John Steenhuisen, Tau says the revised offer was approved by Cabinet following what he called unprecedented trade negotiations. Timakadzo Lishoro filed the story.
Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Pak Stau says Cabinet approved the new proposal to be submitted on Tuesday, building on an earlier offer made in May and responds directly to issues raised in the U.S. 2025 National Trade Estimate Report.
Cabinet has approved that South Africa submits a revised offer as a basis for negotiations with the U.S. South Africa continues consultations with industry in this regard. in consultation with other members of the Southern Africa Customs Union, will identify specific lines to respond to this request. On the economic response package, Cabinet has endorsed the economic response package that includes the establishment of an export desk, which serves as a direct point of contact for affected companies.
But not all of America's demands in these unprecedented trade talks are strictly about trade. Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen says some touch on South Africa's domestic laws, including South Africa's participation in BRICS.
I don't think that's a good precedent to set. I do think, however, that we must have a good hard look at what are our barriers of access to markets around the world and look at how we can remove as many of them as possible, but without compromising your own national sovereignty. And I think that the question you would always ask yourself is, there's a legal saying, mutatis mutandis. Would that country allow you to demand the same of them? And I think that should be the rule of thumb going forward.
Both ministers insist there are no plans to change transformative legislation like land reform or broad-based black economic empowerment, saying that would undermine national sovereignty.
I do think that as South Africans it is important that we reaffirm our own commitment to our own sovereignty as a country. The ability to make decisions on national policy and the direction that we're taking as a country is an extremely important point. And when countries engage us and say, we need you to change your national policy, we should not suddenly think that that constitutes a plan B and C, because then it means that before Parliament passes laws, it must consult another country. It's not a very sustainable thing to do.
Still, the government has made some unprecedented concessions to keep competitive access to the US market. Dawu would not be drawn on the details.
Now, the trick is not to get the US to read about the offer in the newspaper. So please excuse me until such time that at least they've received and processed the offer.
Steenhuisen says Pretoria is not prepared to walk away from trade with the US despite the tensions between the two countries.
They said that we take far too long to lift those bans. They say that they're out of the avian zone and the disease has been dealt with, and yet these prohibitions on them bringing chicken into the country remain in place. So we've gone back to them and said, okay, your animal health experts will say when you have an outbreak and ban, and then when you feel that you've dealt with it and you get the all clear from your veterinarians, you can lift it. It is a very generous offer and a very unprecedented thing for one country to give to another, and it obviously involves a huge element of trust, but it just shows, I think, South Africa's commitment from a trade perspective to try and address some of the things that the US have regarded as trade irritants over a number of years.
At the same time, Dawu says South Africa is pushing hard to grow trade in other parts of the world, including Asia and within Africa through the African Continental Free Trade Area.
But if you look at our trade basket, Africa is the most important. It remains the most important market for South Africa.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakato Leshoro in Pretoria.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Kabu.
Mozambique's opposition leader Venancio Mondlane has been charged with incitement to terrorism and disobedience. He faces a total of 5 charges. The charges relate to post-election violence that left hundreds of people dead. What punishment is he looking at?
The most severe charges are 2. One is incitement for terrorism, and also is being charged for mobilizing people for terrorism during the protests. These charges are really serious and severe. If he is condemned, is found guilty, he could serve 10 years plus years in jail, meaning that he would be banned from political participation, mainly for the 2028 and 2029 electoral cycle.
The director of CDD, the Center for Democracy and Development, Adriano Novunga.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's go to Burkina Faso now, where there's been a sentencing of 13 people to life imprisonment for acts of terrorism, including a 2018 attack against the French embassy, and given lesser jail terms to more than 60 others. This is according to an official statement released on Tuesday by a specialist anti-terror judicial office. The West African nation has been battling jihadist violence for around a decade, and the junta, which came to power in a coup in September of 2022, has struggled to contain. For more on this, Kwezi Mngabisa, Africa political expert, joins us now on the line to unpack. Kwezi, always great having these catch-up sessions with you. How are you on this Wednesday?
Good morning. I'm very well, thank you. And I hope you are well as well.
We are well. We want the warm weather to stay with us. I think this week that's what we're getting. So we're very well, Kwezi.
Thank you.
So what do you make of these latest developments in Burkina Faso regarding the life imprisonment sentences for acts of terrorism?
I think that we must have a bit of a context. The countries in the Sahel, as your introduction indicated, have been struggling with a lot of extremism, terror, and this what compounds the situation is that this threat or the reality of extremism and terror has not been visited upon these countries individually, but it has taken the form of what we call a regional system. So what is happening in Burkina Faso is befalling Mali. The same goes to the countries in what we call the Sahel. So what we see right now is that the administration in Burkina Faso is trying to actually respond, not just simply to the expression of terrorism, but to actually communicate a very strong message that this particular administration is going to do all that it can. Further context is the fact that international actors, particularly in Europe, have always taken it upon themselves to help baby the previous administrations in Burkina Faso and in the broader Sahel. So what Burkina Faso could be communicating, one, to those countries that we are able to put institutions in a tactical response to respond to this terrorism. Secondly, to those that might be having or that are harboring grievances against this administration and think that terror is the way in which they are going to pursue a shift and change, they also have a response to those. And if they choose terrorism, they will also, I think, be processed by, as we've seen with these ones that have just been processed.
This conflict in Burkina Faso has killed more than 26,000 people since 2015, including soldiers and civilians. More than half of the deaths have occurred during the last 3 years, despite junta leader Captain Ibrahim Traore making restoring security a priority. Do you see this conflict ending soon?
Well, I don't think it's correct to characterize it as a conflict per se at this point in time. There's a history to this evolved situation. Where we are right now, just to summarize, where we are right now is that we're no longer dealing with the historical grievances that used to be there in the past. You'll recall that as you rightly point out to the fact that it's been more than a decade where we have had this threat of terror defining the political and security landscape in that particular country and the region. But those were instances whereby people had grievances with past administrations that were dictatorial, that were exclusionary, but perhaps more than anything else, that did not allow for the country's security and political landscape to be defined by being responsive to the needs of the people. So there were genuine grievances, which a lot of people thought that an internationalized response, meaning allowing claims and interest of identifying with international terror groups would actually be a response in toppling those governments. This, in part, was no longer the case when this administration, which was a military coup, came in, which sought to position itself as introducing a form of government that would actually be responsive to the needs of the people. So the internationalized element that brought in this jihadist notion, one way or another, got to be muted. At least that's what the administration of the military junta thought would be happening. But it appears now to be that this impulse, this jihadist impulse, is not only about genuine grievances of locals, but it is actually playing into the hands. It has become a tool to be in the hands of those that want to topple the progress and indeed the existence of the military junta. So I think that we need to be careful in just simply saying that it's a good or bad civil conflict. But we must also understand that there are still people with grievances in that country. There are still people who even allow themselves, or at least think that by aligning themselves to geopolitical politics and strategies and getting rid of the administration in Burkina Faso, their grievances will be addressed.
So it's not a simple answer there in terms of can we see this conflict ending soon? But what do you make of this strategy then that you also touch on that's been employed by Burkina Faso's government against the jihadists?
I don't think at this point in time it's a strategy more than it is a tactical response. The reality of the matter is that any government worth its salt and that actually attempts to communicate to its population that it is serious about dealing with phenomenon such as instability, such as radicalization, extremism, and terrorism, would like to communicate that it is responding in an institutional manner. So one of the positive things that I take out of this particular development is that at least the administration in Burkina Faso wants to explore the path of an institutional response whereby there would be some form of legal process that would be processing individuals who might have engaged in activities that fall outside the normal criminal code. So I think it's something positive as to the integrity of that legal process. That is something that we still have to process and look at. But perhaps more importantly, though, it is up to us to actually monitor and track the conduct of the government in addressing the grievances that makes these individuals think that terrorism, extremism is the only route that they have in order to have their grievances addressed.
And how do you see the Specialist Anti-Terror Judicial Office as contributing to that goal, as well as its credibility? They are the ones who gave us these figures of 13 people to life imprisonment for acts of terrorism.
It's very difficult to actually, I think, pass judgment at this point in time. But more than anything else, the reality of the matter is that once you have the military run your country, things are going to be a little bit extra as in outside of what is normally expected, for example, as a judicial process. We would be interested to follow up on the extent to which the rights of those that have been accused are actually guaranteed or advanced by that judicial process. Do they have legal representation of their choice? Do they have access to that legal representation? Perhaps more importantly, even the terms of reference of that judicial process. Does it allow for natural justice? Does it actually operate on irrefutable proof in order to pass judgment? These are things that I think Burkina Faso, as it struggles with terrorism, and perhaps more importantly, with credibility in responding to the grievances of the people that makes them either choose the route of jihad, or for that matter, to allow themselves to play into the hands of geopolitics that want to see this junta administration jettisoned off.
Will it be important for other Sahel region states then who are battling terrorism to have a specialist judicial office that focuses only on anti-terror?
I think I won't call it the democratic space at this moment. The governance space that is allowed in the neighboring countries would determine the choices that they make, as in to say, do they still trust the judiciary in their countries? Is there a public confidence in those judiciaries? I think these are factors that will play a role in how the countries of the Sahel or the juntas in the neighboring countries in the broader Sahel choose to respond, to process those that have been identified or that they have evidence of having taken part in jihadist activities. The reality of the matter is that the security situation, as your introduction rightly pointed out, is a large determinant on the extent to which the institutionalization of the response to extremism will be allowed to take hold.
What about military courts? Can they maintain their credibility as well as relevance if there is a shift to focus on specialist anti-terror judicial officers?
Well, that's the whole point, ma'am, is that the reality of the matter is that the military courts would be used to actually process military personnel. But now what happens is that because there is a junta or a pushist, if you want to call them like that, people that have taken over power through the military, and they themselves are the administration of the military, they would now like to make that distinction to say our military courts are going to be processing our military, but we have a specific type of offenses that fall outside the criminal code. So let us then establish a court that directly speaks to that. So I think that I don't think at this point in time it will be a bit rushed to actually say that these specialist courts are the way to go, or they are not the way to go. I think that what we need to be looking at, remember, a form takes a shape of content. What is it, and how do these courts and special institutions conduct themselves? Because what we're looking for is justice. People that have actually undertaken jihadist activities must answer for themselves, but the institutions must do so in a manner that actually ensures justice. So it is the substance, not the form, that we should actually be on the lookout for.
How has the withdrawal of approximately 400 French Special Forces personnel from Burkina Faso impacted this conflict?
Well, it definitely has, because many people will actually attribute some of these steps by the government, both in Burkina Faso and in the broader Sahel, as the trigger that has actually set us on this course of action, whereby the administration that has to respond and deal with the security situation on its own is actually understanding what has always been a reality. You cannot respond to terrorism exclusively through tactical military interventions. Is what the French had gone into that part of the continent for. They have not won. And the current administration, whether they are military inspired or not, or democratically elected, they will not win against these jihadist and extremist movements if their only response is the hammer, which is a tactical military interventions. That's the starting point. But the concluding point, I think, for me, is the reality that over time, it is not reliance upon the French, it is not reliance upon mercenaries, it is not even reliance on your own national military defense institutions. It is about finding a political solution that gives a dividend to the stability of the country, whether it is after elections or even during the period in which a military junta is in charge. Is there a stability dividend for everybody, where grievances are addressed, where economic stability and benefit is extended to all, where the safety and sovereignty of the country is extended to each and every part of the country?
Kwezi, always great chatting to you, and thank you for your analysis and much needed insight.
Good morning. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Kwezi Mngqibisa is Africa political expert, talking to us about Burkina Faso having sentenced 13 people to life imprisonment, this for acts of terrorism, including a 2018 attack against the French embassy, and also having given lesser jail terms to more than 60 others. As we make our way to our news headlines, I think let's check in with a day in history. Today, 13th of August. What happened, Peter?
Yeah, quite a few things happened today, actually, in history. In Ethiopia in 1974, we saw the overthrow of Emperor Haile Selassie. And that marked the beginning of a Marxist-Leninist regime under the dirge, reshaping Ethiopia's political landscape. So it was the end of the monarchy in the country, and never to be resurrected again. Of course, he was part of setting up the Organization of African Unity back in the day. And also today in 1990, the ANC suspended its armed struggle. Yeah, the African National Congress formally suspended its armed campaign against apartheid in South Africa following negotiations with the government. And this was, of course, 4 years before democracy came. It was a critical period where we started to see negotiations happen, and the dismantling of apartheid that had been instituted since 1948. That's what happened today in history. It's 7:30, which means it's time for your news headlines. Here's Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News headlines. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The Democratic Republic of Congo Army has accused the M23 rebels of carrying out multiple attacks in eastern DRC, which it says violates the agreement signed in Washington and Doha. The South African anti-migrant group Operation Dudula says it will continue blocking foreign nationals from accessing public health care services in the country. This follows the release of its members who were arrested after questioning patients about their nationality and demanding identity documents. And President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine will not abandon the Donbass, the eastern region that Russia and its proxies now largely control. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's say good morning to Musibudi Makura. She's got our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning once again from the sports desk. Deval Brevi is unbeaten 125 for the Proteas in the second T20 International against Australia. Not only earned his team a comprehensive 53-run victory in Darwin, but also broke all manner of records. So at 22 years old and 105 days, he became the youngest South African to hit a T20 international century, beating Richard Levy's record of 24 years old. He also eclipsed Faf du Plessis' 10-year highest score of 119, while his 41-ball 100 was the second fastest by a South African, behind only David Miller's 35 deliveries in 2017. Brevi says it's a privilege to have entered the history books.
If someone didn't tell me after the game, I think it was at the match something, then I wouldn't have known, but it's Jock Cullis, if I'm correct. Someone said it's Jock, but is it Faf? So I got it wrong, I didn't know. But it's obviously it's a privilege and an honor, and there's not a lot of words. I'm just extremely grateful and excited for what is ahead.
Now, Brevis also says he has always believed in his abilities and also backed himself to make it at the international level. He was, however, careful not to let it get to his head, noting that there's still a long way to go.
I've always believed that this is where I need to be and where I'll be. So I never had doubt or anything. It's all about cricket, how things work out. It is a roller coaster. You have your ups, you have your downs, and it's never ever have I doubted myself. This is just for me the start of, if I could say it like that. It's not that this happened now and now I'm happy or anything. Like, I just want to keep working hard, do the same things.
On to football news now. Sudan lit up the Chan 2024 tournament with a performance that will be remembered long after the group stage dust settles. In a commanding 4-0 demolition of Nigeria, Kwesi Appiah's men sent a clear message: they are not in East Africa to simply make up the numbers. The result not only sealed Sudan's place as serious contenders, but also brought an abrupt end to Nigeria's dreams of lifting the trophy for the very first time since the tournament's inception back in 2009. So Kwesi Appiah, the former Ghanaian national team coach, couldn't hide his satisfaction at the final whistle. Sudan now eye at top of the table showdown with Senegal, while Nigeria will seek redemption in their last match of the group stages. Well, in case you missed it, Mando Duplantis broke the men's pole vault record for a 13th time and the third this year, with a clearance of 6.29 meters at the Hungarian Grand Prix. The 25-year-old double Olympic as well as world champion cleared 6.28 meters at Stockholm Diamond League meeting in June, but then he surpassed that figure with his second attempt in Budapest on Tuesday. Duplantis first broke the world record, which was held by Frenchman Renaud Laveneni for 6 years, in February of 2020, with a 6.17 meter clearance in Poland. On Saturday, he's set to compete at the Silesia Diamond League meet in Poland, where he also broke the world record just last year. And finally, the White House is set to host the Ultimate Fighting Championship UFC event next year as part of the 4th of July celebrations in the USA to mark the 250th anniversary of the country's founding. Now, the Octagon Cage Fight event was announced by UFC boss Dana White, whose friendship with the president dates back to the early 2000s when Donald Trump hosted some of the first ever UFC events at his business properties. Now, White also said he planned to meet with the president as his daughter, Ivanka Trump, at an event at the end of this month to finalize the plans. It will also mark the first time a UFC fighting competition would be hosted at the White House. It's not unclear where the event would then be hosted. UFC fights typically draw tens of thousands of people and are held in large arenas with the sport trademarked 8-sided octagon cage in the middle. Well, that's a wrap of your sports news at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
África. Conhece o Ntivani? Claro que sou eu. Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma. Eu amo música africana. Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel Africa. Okay. Adivinha só, a Channel Africa quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel Africa está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Right, let's take a look at what's happening on the business front. Good morning once again to Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. The Secretary General of the International Civil Aviation Organization, Juan Carlos Salazar, says they expect that in the next 10 years, close to 2.6 million professionals will be required in the air transport sector globally. These include cabin crew members, technicians, air traffic controllers, and many others. This is to make up for the growing sector. He was speaking on the first day of the ICAO Next Generation of Aviation Professionals Global Summit, which began yesterday in Durban, South Africa.
So in that regard, we are working together with governments, with academies, with educational institutions, and with the industry in order to promote these professions and make sure that aviation continues to attract the talent that is necessary to maintain aviation as the safest mode of transportation, but also to enable the transition to cleaner energies that will make aviation the cleanest mode of transportation.
The African Union Africa Water Investment Summit 2025 will get underway in Cape Town in South Africa, Western Cape Province this morning. It is jointly organized by the South African government, the African Union in collaboration with the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, African Union AIP International High-Level Panel on Water Investments for Africa. Together they are mobilizing the political momentum, financial capital and institutional partnerships needed to deliver climate-resilient water and sanitation for all. Nhlanhla Mahlangu reports.
This landmark event will bring together African heads of state, global investors, ministers, private sector leaders, and development institutions in a unified call to close Africa's 30 billion annual water investment gap. The summit seeks to mobilize investment for bankable, climate-resilient and water sanitation projects, ensuring water security, economic growth, and sustainable development across the continent. About 2,300 participants are expected at the summit.
Independent economist Alice Kruger says South Africa's muted economic growth is resulting in negative employment outcomes. This as the latest data released by Stats SA show that unemployment increased from 32.9% in the first quarter to 33.2% in the second quarter of 2025. The data shows that although 19,000 new jobs opportunities were created in the second quarter, the labor force increased by 159,000. The data shows that according to the expanded definition, unemployment decreased from 43.1% in the first quarter to 42.9% in the second quarter. Kruger comments.
So this is really, I would say, negative news. It shows us that with an economy growing at, say, 0.6% quarter on quarter in the second quarter, it is way too low to sustain our labor force, and it is way too low to make a dent in our unemployment rate.
French mining group Eramet has appointed an executive, Clement Jacquemil, to oversee mineral processing in Gabon. The move comes after the West African country seeks to end exports of unrefined manganese and boost local processing. Gabon's government announced at the end of May that it would ban the export of raw manganese from January 2029, joining other West African states in seeking to capture more value from their mining resources. Jacquemil was previously Deputy Chief Operating Officer in charge of manganese ore. The U.S. Treasury Department says the country's government's budget deficit grew nearly 20% in July to $291 billion despite a nearly $21 billion jump in customs duty collections from President Donald Trump's tariffs, which outlays growing faster than receipts. The deficit for July was up 19% from July 2024. Receipts for the month grew 2%, while outlays jumped 10%, a record high for the year. The month of July this year had fewer business days than last year, so the Treasury Department says that adjusting for the difference would have increased receipts by about $20 billion, resulting in a deficit of about $271 billion. Let's have a look at financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 Naira 535. In Botswana, 13 Pula 33. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 429. Zambia, 23 Kwacha 14. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 Real 42. In Russia, 79 rubles 58. India, 87 rupees 63. China, 7 yuan 18. South Africa, 17 rand 65 cents. $1 is 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Taking a look at commodities, gold is at $3,350, platinum at $1,332 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil, $66.09 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's unemployment rate keeps rising, now over 33%, and nearly half of young people out of work. That means millions of families are struggling to put food on the table as prices go up. Oliver Meth from Black Sash, a South African civil society organization that advocates for social justice and supports vulnerable communities, joins us on the line now to talk about why basic income support is urgently needed to help people survive and live with dignity. Oliver, thank you for making time for us this morning. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having us.
So with unemployment at over 33%, what does this mean for everyday South Africans and everyday life?
It has a very devastating impact on many households, particularly, it increases, the vulnerability of of many homes actually provide and put food on the table. And we've seen this with the high food inflation, particularly in essentials like meat, vegetables, and cooking oil, is that it's limiting the social support that's currently available, like the grants and the 370, etc., which is leaving millions unable to actually provide and to ensure that they have like the basic nutritions on the table. And I think with the unwell, not that we think, and we've seen that with the recent unemployment stats, we cannot continue to normalize this structural unemployment and exclusion from the labor market for the 33.2% that we've seen in the quarter two.
As SASH, you're calling for a basic income support. Can you explain what this is and how exactly it would work?
Sure. So a basic income support, which so there are three levels of social assistance. So currently the government gives us social assistance, which typically refers to a tax-funded benefit or like a cash grants or in-kind benefits that we've seen through the Department of Social Development, like the food parcels, etc., which is a non-contributory insofar as recipients are not making any social insurance contributions to a fund. So that's one element of it. The other element is that there's a social insurance, which is a contributory system of benefits, which can be claimed by workers or their employers who have contributed to insurance themselves, such as unemployment, maternity, etc. And then what we're calling for now, which is an inclusion of both of these, is a social protection floor, which is in line with the International Labour Organizations. And this ideally gives like a national security system that compromises of access to a nationally defined set of goods, which constitutes the essential healthcare, which is the primary healthcare, including maternity care, that meets with the criteria that is accessible, that provides a basket of accessible goods. So, for example, if an Oliver Met through a centralized system is found out to be unemployed, essentially array of government services should then kick in through various departments like unemployment, like the NHI through the Department of Health, like various food parcels through social development. So social protection floor ideally is just a basic income grant which should be provided to people unemployed people between the ages of 18 and 59 who are unable to afford for themselves. And this is not just a cash payment, but should be a basket of holistic services through various government departments that should kick in to support them.
How will this basic income support fit alongside efforts to create jobs and grow the economy? You already alluded to the fact that it fits with guidelines for the ILO.
Yes, that's correct. So the social protection or the social security would provide benefits to individuals based on their risk faced within their life cycle. So be it unemployment, disability, maternity, as I mentioned earlier on. And also generally to those suffering, poverty and other social exclusions through unemployment. So social protection scheme can be financed and should be financed through contributions from wages or other social insurances, or also ideally through general taxation. And this is ideally what we're calling for the basic income grant to then be funded through these mechanisms. I know that there's a lot of argument that the country doesn't have funds, but if we are to tighten our control mechanisms through illicit flow and corruption, I think those kind of funds can be pumped back into the fiscus to provide for social protection or ideally basic income grant.
All right, Oliver, we'll leave it there for today. We thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you so much.
Great. Oliver Meth is Communications and Media Manager at South African civil society organization called Black Sash.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
The United States was very vocal at the beginning of South Africa's G20 presidency, and this is largely due to strained relations with South Africa at the time, that they were not really keen on participating. Where do they stand right now?
The U.S. is planning to take over the presidency of the G20 next year, and our understanding from them is that they intend to continue to do so, and therefore it is quite difficult then then to be in a situation where you are not attending deputies' meetings or discussions during our presidency and then to take over the presidency next year. From a finance track perspective, there has been engagement. We've been working on a communique last week and this week here in Zimbabwe. What's important about that is that it's a consensus document. And so all the members in the room have to agree to the language that is used there. And our US colleagues have been part of those discussions and negotiations.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Today marks the opening of the AU AIP Africa Water Investment Summit 2025 in Cape Town, running until the 15th of August. Hosted under South Africa's G20 presidency, the gathering has drawn African heads of state, ministers, global investors, development partners, and the private sector to tackle the continent's $30 billion annual water investment gap. Now, the summit is jointly organized by the Republic of South Africa, the African Union, the AUDA NEPAD, the AU's Development Agency, and the AU AIP, which is the African Union's flagship water investment program, aiming to mobilize at least $30 billion a year by 2030. And it's focusing on securing finance for climate resilient water and sanitation projects. Well, joining us to discuss the significance of this event and what it could mean for Africa's water future is South Africa's Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, Sello Seihotlolo. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, DM, and welcome to the program.
Yeah, very good morning to yourselves. I'm just joining you outside of the CTICC for better reception, but it's a pleasure to be here. I'm honored.
So, Deputy Minister, why is it especially important for a country like South Africa to be hosting such a high-level gathering on water investment at this time?
Yeah, as you quite correctly know, South Africa is a water-scarce country. We're one of the 30 countries in the world that do not receive sufficient water in order for us to be able to be water secure. We're also facing challenges in and around non-revenue water. We're sitting at over 46% in terms of the water that is pottably treated to potable standards that is being lost due to illegal connections, due to failing municipal systems. We also have a problem or a challenge, or rather a crisis, in as far as the state of our raw water quality in the context of pollution. And all of those particular issues and challenges that have been wholly ventilated at the Water and Sanitation in Durban that we held in March this year, are the probably at the forefront of why we need to be able to be in a position where we can attract investment into bulk water infrastructure, but obviously with also an emphasis of dealing with the endemic issues at a local government level.
Are there any commitments or investment pledges that have already come in to try and help narrow this annual investment gap of $30 billion?
Well, not as yet, or not that I know of. I mean, we've been wholly invested, of course, in making sure that we're able to receive all the dignitaries since Monday. We welcomed the president of Botswana last night. So I think those are the kind of conversations and those are the kind of things that we will be finding out from today up until Friday. There will be matchmaking investment conversations and bilaterals that will be taking place from today until Friday. So perhaps one would have a better picture of, what kind of pledges have we received, from who and for what projects, because all of the African, as the African continent, we do have over 80 projects that we consider as bankable, and then we will be able to obviously communicate accordingly once the summit comes to a close on Friday.
Rivers know no borders, so I guess collaboration is a big thing. How will this summit strengthen these regional collaborations on shared water resources and cross-border water security?
I think as South Africa, we've done very well in as far as that is concerned. In early May, we also had an investment conference in Lesotho under the Orange Singu River Commission, that is Oresecom. We also have Limcom, and I think the the issue in and around that relationship that we've been able to build as South Africa with our neighboring countries, Oresecom obviously encompassing the sharing of water basins between ourselves as South Africa, Lesotho, Botswana, and Namibia has done very well. We've contributed quite significantly as South Africa, Limcom as well. And I think when we do talk about climate resilient infrastructure and we use the Limcom and Oresecom as examples of how relations can be forged, financed, moving forward, I think those two particular transboundary schemes are an example of that. And of course, it's important to emphasize the point that with the phase 2 of the Lesotho Highlands project, of course, that has been marred with delays and increases in budgets. It's also very important to highlight as a major project that we are undertaking as South Africa with Lesotho.
You mentioned 80 bankable projects across the continent. How do you ensure that investors overcome issues that they might have with things like governance and risk to make these investments more bankable?
Yeah, I think that's an important question. I think if you look at, for example, in the context of South Africa, investors obviously have lost confidence, particularly in relation to how municipalities have been governed as water services authorities, because at a national level, we're responsible for bulk water infrastructure, we're responsible for management and regulation of the resource. But in terms of service delivery, in terms of where everything really takes place, that takes place at the local government level. And we know that local government has lost sense of credibility and, in the context of South Africa. And I think also it would take some legislative reforms in order for us to be able to navigate, and making sure that we're able to instill a certain sense of confidence. We are undertaking amendments to the Water Services Act, which seeks to obviously separate or differentiate rather water services authorities and water service providers, with a licensing condition for water services provider to make sure that water services at the local government level is more professionalized. And I think once we are able to do that, we would be able to, of course, then instill that sense of confidence in investors who know that once they invest in water-related projects at that level, they will be able to get value for money. I think it's the only way in which we would be able to go about it. Legislative reforms on our national legislative key principles. I think that's very fundamentally important. We need to be able to, of course, work very hard in making sure that we're also able to reform local government. The National Treasury, of course, has introduced the Metro Trading Entity Program, which seeks to also then separate all of the, like for example, Johannesburg Water, which seeks to be a independent entity within the city of Johannesburg. Its own finances, its own budgets, its own staff, and things like that. So I think that reform is fundamentally important, particularly in the context of metropolitan municipalities in South Africa.
Deputy Minister, we've run out of time, but very briefly, a lot of times these summits have the right people in the room, declarations, commitments made. How do we make sure that there's real accountability and measurable action after this event?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the things that we had a conversation about. But I think Minister Majodina and with President Ramaphosa having elevated water as priority number one, that for me, gives confidence that this is obviously a ministry that understands what are the challenges in the country. And we're working very closely with water boards as water utilities, entities of the department, as well as the whole sector of water and sanitation in South Africa, to make sure that whatever outcomes and whatever investment opportunities that are created from this particular summit, those will be championed within the department and its stakeholders.
Deputy Minister, we wish you the best of luck at the summit, and let's hope that great things come out of it. But thanks so much indeed for your time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. That's South Africa's Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, Selo Seitlolo. 8 o'clock Central African Time, which means it's 9 o'clock in Addis Ababa, and it is 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. No, 7 o'clock in Dakar. Thank you so much indeed for joining us in this third hour of the program, the final hour of today's show. We're broadcasting live from our studios in Johannesburg in South Africa, on the internet at www.channelafrica.co.za, and you can also catch us on your mobile app. Just look for SABC Plus and then Channel Africa, and there you'll find us. I'm Peter Ndoro.
And my name is Asanda Beda. Very good morning, everyone. And in this hour, because it's Wednesday, we profile an African doing great things in and around the continent as well as internationally. And we'll be shining the spotlight today on Hujet Umutoni, who is a global strategist and cultural architect. She works at the intersection of education, peace building, and creative industries, as well as strategic partnerships. We'll find out more about what exactly that means. Let's get our news first. Here's Onele Nsinzi with those details, and then Musibudi Makura will follow with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. The Democratic Republic of Congo Army has accused the M23 rebels of carrying out multiple attacks in eastern DRC, which it says violates agreements signed in Washington and Doha. The army has warned that it reserves the right to respond to provocation. The statement comes a day after the M23 rebels accused Congolese forces of mobilizing more troops and violating the terms of a declaration of principles signed last month in Doha, voicing support for a permanent ceasefire. The Qatar-hosted talks were intended to run parallel to a mediation effort by the U.S. President Donald Trump's administration involving Congo and Rwanda. An investigation by the British Army has found that some soldiers stationed at a controversial base in Kenya continue to use sex workers despite being banned from doing so. The report states that soldiers at the British Army Training Unit Kenya are using sex workers at a low or moderate level, adding that more work is needed to stamp out the practice. The investigation covered a period of more than 2 years, examining conduct at the base dating back to 2022. It was commissioned in October 2024 following an investigation by ITV into the behaviors of soldiers, including allegations that some army personnel were paying local women for sex. The South African anti-migrant group Operation Ndoro says it will continue blocking foreign nationals from accessing public healthcare services in the country. This follows the release of its members who were arrested at the clinic in Soweto, south of Johannesburg, after questioning patients about their nationality and demanding identity documents. Operation Ndoro President Zandile Dabula says foreign nationals need to pay for health services.
We do not want foreigners to be accessing our public healthcare facilities. If they need medical attention, they're more than welcome to go to private facilities and pay for them. Now, if we have a public facility that has a method of payment and tracking who this person is, which means that the person has come to the country legally, then we will not have a problem as long as they're going to pay for the services they receive. We don't have a problem. Okay. But if we are illegal, we don't want you near our clinics.
The Department of International Relations in South Africa has rejected a U.S. State Department Human Rights Country Report on South Africa as inaccurate and deeply flawed. The State Department has released its annual country report on human rights practices, including South Africa, where it alleges that the human rights situation in South Africa significantly worsened during the year, citing reports of arbitrary and unlawful killings, arbitrary arrest or detention, and the repression of racial minorities. In a lengthy statement released by DERCO, the ministry registered its profound disappointment with the U.S. report and pointed to what it viewed as human rights deficiencies in the United States in a sharp repudiation. Sean Price Peace reports from New York that this development could add an additional layer of tension to an already strained bilateral relationship.
The DIRCO statement affirmed South Africa's institutions designed to protect the country's democracy, including Chapter 9 institutions, which it said were constitutionally mandated to protect and advance human rights. DIRCO accused the United States of seeking to produce one-sided, fact-free reports without due process or engagement, pointing to the irony of what it called significant and documented concerns about human rights within the United States, including the treatment of refugees and breaches in due process by its own agencies, such as the Federal Immigration Enforcement Agency known as ICE. DIRCO said it remained open to addressing what it called distortions through diplomatic channels.
Lastly, President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine will not abandon the Donbas, which is the eastern region that Russia and its proxies now largely control. He has warned that doing so would give Russia a springboard for future attacks. It's believed annexing the Donbas will be a key demand of the Russian leader when he meets President Donald Trump on Friday in Alaska. Kira Rudik is a Ukrainian member of parliament.
What are the security guarantees that are going to be provided to Ukraine? Because without that, any discussions about territories, swapping lands, etc., do not make any sense. We have been in the ceasefire agreements with Russia since 2014, and we can tell you for a fact that they are not to honor them.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, former Premier League referee David Coote has been given an 8-week suspension while the White House is set to host a UFC event. Details coming up at 8:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
It's Wednesday, and this is the day that we dedicate to shining a spotlight on Africans who are doing amazing things. And this week, the day is dedicated to Haget Umutoni, a global strategist, a partnership strategist, founder of Engage Africa, and a cultural architect. She joins us now to tell us about her story and the work that she does. Haget, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you so much, and thanks for joining us on Africa Rise and Shine.
Thank you so much for having me. It's exciting and what a privilege.
Great. So you are a global strategist, a cultural architect working where education, peace building, and the creative industries meet with strategic partnerships. Firstly, how would you describe a cultural architect?
I would describe that as somebody who connects the world, who connects the dots, I would say. So they call me a human connector, and essentially I design experiences, I showcase the continent in a different way. I try my best to change the way the world sees Africa and how we see ourselves, which is what the mission of Engage is all about.
And what inspired you to be this cultural architect?
Oh, I grew up between two different worlds. I'm from Rwanda, and Rwanda with all the weight of its history and resilience. And I also grew up in Switzerland, which gave me a structure, stability, and exposure. I went later on to the university in the UK. And over the years, my travel across Africa and beyond gave me a sense of deeper understanding of our continent diversity, potential, and place in the world. So from a young age, reading was a window into possibilities. So my father would offer me books from African authors, and that really developed my love for the continent, my curiosity for the continent, and helped me see how our continent's richness and complexity long before I experienced it firsthand. So really looking into my early years, my early years, also how I was shaped by being a survivor of the genocide against the Tutsi in ways I'm still unpacking today, has given me a sense of purpose. It taught me the cost of silence and the importance of using your voice. So with that through storytelling, justice and peace building. So really it builds the architecture of bringing together how do you blend your trauma and triumph and tradition build it from a global perspective, which is what has been fueled everything I do today.
Yeah. And with that background, I mean, of your Rwandan heritage and what life was like growing up, how do you view yourself now? How would you say you identify now, and how all that experience has shaped your view, your inner view about who Heget Umutoni is?
First of all, it has created an identity of who I am, and the beauty of how I grew up. I grew up really I had a good childhood, which was shaken by the genocide against the Tutsi, but it has also gave me a sense of purpose, of knowing where I'm from, fighting for who I am, using my voice, being able to actually take a center stage and then fight for justice. So it have fueled this sense of belonging, which makes me be proud of no matter what history I'm from, no matter how low I can go, I can always get up and define myself, and that's the beauty of who we are as African.
So then, how do you come to decide on settling on or at Geneva, Switzerland, as your home? Talk to us about that part of your story.
I come from a blended family. I went to Switzerland in 1999. My mother was living in Switzerland, so I was able to join. I was quite young during the genocide, and I went to Switzerland for a quite young age. So that's how I found myself in Switzerland to join my mother, and that life as well, reshaped also my global perspective and who I am today, and then span my career in that way.
And I guess that partly answers my next question, which is taking from your Geneva side of experience and then your Rwandan ethnicity. Does it matter to you that you are this global citizen, that you are well-traveled and exposed to different cultures in order to effectively deliver on the work that you do, especially on forming strategic partnerships for creative expression and peace building?
Oh, absolutely. If you're not curious and exposed, you can bring from both coins of the world. So the essence of who I am is about the people and transformation and the connection and the strategy comes from the people, the diversity of the people that I meet. So having those two diverse spaces, and I really don't even put it on Switzerland and Rwanda alone. I love South Africa. Talking about South Africa, I love South Africa, and I studied in the UK. So those kind of different places that I've been. I'm currently living in Ghana. Has really shaped the global perspective of who I am and who I attract, and has really helped me a lot in those choices of work that I went for. For example, I went to study in the UK simply because I wanted to speak and be bilingual, actually trilingual, speak English. And so I could come back to Switzerland and work in an international organization to be able to, to change policies. Originally, I wanted to change the world, change policies, and for Africa as a continent as a whole. And that's how I found myself in working in international organizations, such as the World Bank and the World Economic Forum and so forth.
Is it important for you to be based on the African continent because of the work that you do? You're now based in Ghana, as you say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like I moved to Ghana 2 years ago, and I feel like you understand the reality of where you are and what's missing once you are there. So I really wanted to bring investment between the West to East and the world to the continent. And Ghana became an easy choice because, I am also with the World Bank. I'm working at the World Bank as a part of, I work for the largest fund for education at the World Bank. And I was privileged to be able to be brought here by work. So it allowed me to also kind of analyze what else could I bring, given my expertise? How do I add my little dot of who I am through the ecosystem that is here? So I'm really and it's also, as much as it's hard to travel on the continent, but it allows me to be able to go to Cote d'Ivoire, which is next door to Nigeria, and to, this direct flight. It's kind of a hub to allow me to understand, okay, how do I bring, what I do and my expertise to the continent being of where I am.
Right, it's 15 minutes past 8 Central African time. If you've just joined us on Africa Rise and Shine, we're in conversation with Heget Umutoni, a global strategist and cultural architect, also founder of Engage Africa. She's our Wednesday Spotlight guest. So, you founded Engage Africa, Heget, an advisory firm that connects Africa's visionaries to global platforms, partnerships, and investments. Tell us more about this platform.
So Engage Africa is a boutique strategic advisory that connects African visionaries to global platform partnerships, investment, and really shifting narrative and unlocking influence. Essentially, given the fact that, from 12, I was in Switzerland, I have always wanted to, people would ask me, so how is, living on the continent? Do you have big houses? Do you meet lions? I went to a ski session when I was young, and this lady, it was really not, it was not ignorance. It really was the lack of how we are seeing, how she was being seen. She was shown the continent. And now I told her, we are most privileged, and with of course, there's two sides. And I really, from that young age, it made me realize that, if I'm not the one, it starts from home. If you're not changing, the way we think about ourselves, the way we showcase the continent. I love traveling the continent. I love showcasing beauty, but also the development side of things, being real. But it really starts by shifting that narrative and being proud of ourselves and where we are from. So I was like, you know what? This is how I have to start what I do. And having the side of development and policy and the creative side of things, I love fashion designers. I support fashion designers on the continent, bringing them from the continent to Switzerland and the world. It really starts by small little things, and I was like, how do I bring all of that together from the perspective that I am interested in changing the development side of things, but at the same time, I want to showcase the beauty of our continent through travel. So I organize trips for investment purposes. It was very easy with Rwanda because my government, supported me in that. I brought in collaboration with my colleagues, I brought like 20 young high net worth individual to visit Rwanda, to also look into investment they can bring into into Rwanda. And that trip opened a window to other things. So yeah, it's been fantastic, but at the same time also allowed me to collaborate with other people, like creating platform, convening platform such as Heritage Collective, which is also focused on women, allows me to see what's missing and what is needed in that space and where and how.
And that's a great support, because Rwanda is a very entrepreneurial country, according to my view. If it doesn't come after Kenya, or they toe-to-toe, and the support that the government gives for entrepreneurs. I was there last year, and I was blown away to find out about all the innovations coming from the country on the space of business, especially young people. So I'm sure that makes you proud as well as a Rwandan.
Oh, absolutely. We are a young continent. The Africa is the youngest, and we need to allow and shape how our youth perceive themselves and how they're working with themselves. And also Rwanda has lost a lot, and you have to focus on the future of your continent.
Right.
The future is the young people. So if you don't, you have to put the ecosystem, the services, the governance in place. So I'm really proud of that, and also the central stage that we give to women. And the reason why, like, also, I love, for example, Ghana. There's the creative side of things, which is added to how each country has been really focused on the strengths of itself. Rwanda may be entrepreneurship, and for example, Ghana, the creative industry is so booming as much as Nigeria is also doing. There's that growth which is coming. So having those parallel, like how do I bring the expertise of what people are doing in Rwanda to Ghana and vice versa, and the rest of the continent? How do we learn? How do we bridge that gap to collaborate? So really, it's all about collaboration and winning together, which is with that mindset of shift mindset is very important for me.
So, in terms of your initial aims under Engage Africa, have you stayed on course, or you've since seen the need to expand to other aims to meet the different needs that have emerged through your travel and what you've seen needs to be met?
Oh, absolutely. Like Engage is all about collaboration, and I believe in collaboration. I believe that I can do things alone, which is the essence of who I am. And so I have co-created and co-convened a platform called the Heritage Collective, which is dedicated for leadership elevation for women, African women, but also women who are supporting the continent. All the work women are doing on the continent, but also men who are, he for she, and forging intentional connection, building, collective power among emerging and established women leaders, African women leaders. We champion each other's work, open doors for the next generation, and ensure women are visible and influential at every table. Like, for example, we launched this Heritage Collective at Africa CEO Forum in Abidjan, and we realized that there was such a low number of women who were attending, who are at the highest level, and yet we have so many powerful women. So that's one of the initiatives. But I also serve as a cultural attaché and business advisor for Story House, where Story House it's kind of a house to bring shape and culture creative economy project that bridge Africa to the world. They're based in LA, but they are really bringing the expertise and the collaboration and all the richness of what they have to the continent. So showcasing that is very important for me, which is kind of bridging from the creative, from the policy and power, and also showcasing and working together and really collaborating with each other.
On that point of the Heritage Collective, as co-convener of this network, and as a leader yourself who's building a legacy of progressive and positive stories of Africa for the world to know and remember, what do you believe the building blocks of making a leader entail?
It's a very good question. I think essentially one of the things that we think we have a space to all win together. There's really no need to reinvent the wheel. We can just add to each other to collaborate, to convene with each other, to complement one another. I think there's many little platforms that are doing the same things, but how do we as a continent come together? Which is why we created the Africa free trade, to see how we can all come together to be able to bring our ideas together. So I think what we need as a leader is how you giving me a platform, and giving me a voice, asking me the right pertinent questions, exposing me, makes the leader out of me. You are giving me you are elevating me. And this is what we need to do. We need to actually give platform to one another. We need to be able to empower one another. We need to open the door for others who don't have the opportunities, because it's a lot of, it's a privilege. We're really privileged to be able to have that one person open the door and then push you to do better for yourself. So it's really about how we empower one another. And And we can only empower one another if we feel like there is enough space for all of us to win. And there is enough space for all of us to win. It's just we just have to really think in that collective way and not be afraid.
Yeah.
And create, yeah. So I really believe in I'm a period poverty advocate, and really starts by those little taboos conversation we remove. It's really some things like that. How do you remove the fact that, you know what, we are enough? And I really appreciate the fact that, I can have a platform to showcase what I do, so I can be able to inspire somebody else. I don't know who I'm inspiring. I don't know who I can actually bring on board to work with, but that's how it starts. And thank you for that.
Right. And I know we're talking women leadership, we're talking business leadership, but let's talk political leadership a bit. In your home country, Rwanda, you observed Liberation Day last month on the 4th of July, and there's a lot happening in the country with mediated peace talks, a remembrance of the end of war, the civil war that you touched on earlier, while another war rages with the M23 rebels. Is there much to celebrate in how far Rwanda has come, in your view, in leadership, particularly on those peace-building efforts?
Absolutely. I mean, Rwanda, 31 years is nothing. If you go back into where the country was before and the division that was in the country, you can see that, we have come a long way. And even to be proud to say that we are Rwandan. So, I'm very proud of my president. I'm very proud of the government and the work they have done. I'm very proud to say that, I'm Rwandan and I have survived and I can dream out loud. Having a whole generation that can dream out loud is powerful. And not only that, you can see the economic growth. You can see, we walk on the streets with no worries. We don't work on, behind our shoulders. But that took a lot of time. That took a lot of sacrifices to get where we are today. And having grown up, you remember before and now, I remember, being afraid. We were called cockroaches, and so there is no that anymore. And there is businesses. Rwanda is booming, and the most important thing, there's a security. People can study, there's a health system that's in, and there is investment that's coming into the country. As what it comes to the political instability around us, that cannot be stopped. But because we also have, unfortunately, given the division of the borders, the colonizers didn't help us. We have to protect our borders. We have to protect our people, and so that's all I can say in terms of like when it comes to celebrating where we are. Of course, we have to celebrate where we come from.
Yeah.
Of course, we have to celebrate the growth we have come from, but we also have to protect, our nations from within the country. But M23 is about DRC, so there's not much I can say about that.
Right. As you've said before, you've worked with the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and currently the Global Partnership for Education, which is the largest fund for education at the World Bank. What is of utmost importance to you when it comes to championing for educational causes? And do you have specific age groups of interests on this particular part?
Absolutely. We focus on early childhood education because, as you know, the basics changes everything. Currently, the Global Partnership for Education give grants to lower income countries for countries to give 20%, at least 20% of their national budget to education. So my portfolio is about really bringing celebrities and heads of state to champion education on that sense. And it's very important to look at marginalized communities who don't have access to education, whether it's because of lack of accessibility, there is young girls who are still, there's a gap, mentality of, girls shouldn't be into school. Now we see a shift of, because we have focused a lot on girls, now there is young boys who are falling into the trap and not going to school. So, looking into those bottlenecks of the young people who don't have access to education, how do we support those, the basics? So it's really about early childhood education, yes.
Just briefly, because yes.
Yeah, and for heads of states, it's very important for our continent, for our heads of state of Africa to really invest in education, talk about education, and to give that 20% of national, domestic financing on education.
Yes, we've run out of time completely, but I need to ask on this particular topic, the Vaccine Alliance, Gavi, that you've worked with. What are some of the challenges you've seen that form barriers to access to immunization on our continent? Because the goal of this alliance is to increase access to immunization in poor countries.
So it's finances. Finances. And, polio was eradicated in Africa because the Bill Gates Foundation was able to give, to dedicate specifically finances on that. So one of the key issues is finances and awareness. How do we, some people refuse vaccines, but essentially what's lacking is developing spaces for ourselves to create our own vaccines and, education around that and finances.
Agathe, it's been such a pleasure chatting to you. I feel like it was 2 minutes instead of 25 because there's still so much that we could have gone into and there's so many hats that you wear, but you do continue to inspire us. I know you said you don't know who you inspire because you don't sometimes see the faces or you don't get those testimonials, but I'm giving you one right now. You are such a great leader for our continent and thank you for the work that you do. Please continue to champion on.
Thank you so much for having me on, me and Peter. Have a lovely day.
Agathe Umutoni is a global strategist, a cultural architect, and founder of Engage Africa. Let's get our news headlines at 8:31 Central African Time. Here's Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Burkina Faso has sentenced 13 people to life imprisonment for acts of terrorism, including a 2018 attack against the French embassy. The Democratic Republic of Congo Army has accused the M23 rebels of carrying out multiple attacks in eastern DRC, which it says violates agreements signed in Washington and Doha. And President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine will not abandon the Donbas, the eastern region that Russia and its proxies now largely control. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's catch you up with the sport, and we say good morning once again to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning once again from the sports desk. Former Premier League referee David Coote has been given an 8-week suspension by the Football Association for comments made about ex-Liverpool boss Jurgen Klopp on social media. So Coote was sacked by the Premier League in December of 2024 and is further sanctioned by the FA for an aggravated breach of Rule E 3.2 because of the reference he made to Klopp's nationality in the video. The clip, which was filmed around July of 2020, was leaked online in November of 2024. Coote also admitted the charge. The FA's written reasons for the verdict said Coote expressed deep remorse and also acknowledged his comments were crass as well as inappropriate. In cricket news now, Devil Brevis unbeaten 125 for the Proteas in their second T20 international against Australia not only earned his team a comprehensive 53-run win in Darwin, but also broke all manner of records. So at 22 years and 105 days old, he became the youngest South African to hit a T20 international century, beating Richard Levy's record of 24 years old. He also eclipsed Faf du Plessis' 10-year highest score of 119, while his 41 ball 100 was the second fastest by a South African behind David Miller's 35 deliveries back in 2017. Brevis says it's a privilege to have entered the history books.
If someone didn't tell me after the game, I think it was at the match something, then I wouldn't have known, but it's Jock Ellis, if I'm correct. Someone said it's Jock. But is it Faf? So I got it wrong, I didn't know. But it's obviously it's a privilege and an honor, and there's not a lot of words. I'm just extremely grateful and excited for what is ahead.
At the same time, Brevis also says he's always believed in his abilities and backed himself to make it to the international level. He was, however, very careful not to get ahead of himself, noting that there's still a long way to go to be a success in the international format of the game.
I've always believed that this is where I need to be and where I'll be. So I never had doubt or anything. It's all about cricket, how things work out. It is a roller coaster. You have your ups, you have your downs, and it's never ever have I doubted myself. This is just for me the start of, if I could say it like that. It's not that this happened now and now I'm happy or anything. Like, I just want to keep working hard, do the same things.
Onto this now, the White House is set to host the Ultimate Fighting Championship, the UFC event, next year as part of the July 4th celebration in the USA to mark the 250th anniversary of the country's founding. Now, the Octagon Cage fight event was announced by UFC boss Dana White, whose friendship with the president dates back to the early 2000s when Donald Trump hosted some of the first ever UFC events at his business properties. Now, White said he planned to meet with the president and his daughter Ivanka at the end of the month to finalize the plans. It will also mark the very first time a UFC fighting competition would be hosted at the White House. It's still unclear where the event would be hosted. UFC fights typically draw tens of thousands of people and are held in large arenas with the sport's trademarked 8-sided octagon cage in the middle. And finally, American sprinter Sha'Carri Richardson says she will seek help following her arrest over the allegations of domestic violence. The 25-year-old was detained on the 27th of July at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport following an altercation with her boyfriend as well as fellow U.S. athlete Christian Coleman. Now, a police report said footage appeared to show Coleman being shoved into a wall before Richardson threw an item at him. Coleman, meanwhile, did not want to participate in the investigation and declined to be a victim, with the police officer's report having stated that in that report. Well, that concludes your sports news this morning on Africa Rise and Shine. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Nkhanza zokhudza amuna ndi azimayi kapena kuti gender based violence GBV zikuwononga miyoyo komanso kuphwasula midzi. Zikuchitika m'manyumba, m'masukulu, malo ogwirira ntchito ndipo kwambiri mwakachetechete, koma sizikuyenera kupitirira. Mukazimva yankhulani. Ngati mwakhuzidwa, funani chithandizo, chifukwa kusachita chilichonse sikuthandiza. Mverani kuma wireless onse 14 a SABC kuchokera lachitatu pa 23 mwezi uno wa Julai kuti mumve zokambirana, malangizo, masewero, zionetsero za maphunziro ndi mafunso okhuza nkhanza za amuna ndi azimayi ndi akatswiri, anthu opulumuka ku nkhanzazi, kukhazikitsa lamulo komanso dziko lonse lokhuzidwa ndi nkhanzazi. zonsezi pa wailesi yomwe mumayikonda ya SABC. Imbirani pa nambala 0800 428 428 kuti munene za nkhanzazi kapena kupeza chithandizo. Nkhanza zokhuza amuna ndi azimayi zimatha ndi inu. Uthenga ukufikani kuchokera ku SABC.
Let's check in with the world of business now as we say good morning to Chandugo Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. As the world is grappling with a number of challenges, including the recent sweeping tariffs from the US, the Africa 50 is hosting its shareholders meeting in Maputo, Mozambique. The event is expected to be addressed by Mozambican President Daniel Chapo. Africa 50 is one of the key institutions pushing for infrastructure development in Africa. Kayeli Kumalo reports from Maputo.
A very important event is happening here. So it's hosted by Africa 50 alongside the Mozambican government. So it comes amid all the global uncertainties emanating from the tariffs in the US. So it's all about crafting the internal mechanisms to cushion and make sure that the infrastructure rollout, for example, is one of the biggest really endeavors for the African continent.
De Beers joint venture in Angola has discovered a new kimberlite field, the most common source of mined diamonds. This is its first such discovery in 3 decades. The Anglo-American is jointly exploring for diamonds in Angola in partnership with the country's state-owned diamond company, Indiama. In a statement, De Beers said the joint venture had hit kimberlite in its first drill hole into a high-priority cluster of targets in July 2025. The Secretary General of the International Civil Aviation Organization, Juan Carlos Salazar, says they expect that in the next 10 years, close to 2.6 million professionals will be required in the airport transport sector globally. These include cabin crew members, technicians, air traffic controllers, and many others. This is to make up for the growing sector. He was speaking on the first day of the summit which began yesterday in Durban, South Africa.
So in that regard, we are working together with governments, with academies, with educational institutions, and with the industry in order to promote these professions and make sure that aviation continues to attract the talent that is necessary to maintain aviation as the safest mode of transportation, but also to enable the transition to cleaner energies that will make aviation the cleanest mode of transportation.
The African Union Africa Water Investment Summit 2025 will get underway in Cape Town in South Africa's Western Cape province this morning. It is jointly organized by the South African government, the African Union in collaboration with the African Union Development Agency NEPAD, African Union AIP International High Level Panel on Water Investments for Africa. Together, they are mobilizing the political momentum, financial capital, and institutional partnerships needed to deliver climate-resilient water and sanitation for all. Nhlanhla Mahlangu reports.
This landmark event will bring together African heads of state, global investors, ministers, private sector leaders, and development institutions in a unified call to close Africa's $30 billion annual water investment gap. The summit seeks to mobilize investment for bankable climate-resilient and water sanitation projects, ensuring water security, economic growth, and sustainable development across the continent. About 2,300 participants are expected at the summit.
Stocks in Asia climbed and the US dollar was subdued as data shows both resilience in major economies and the need for central banks to remain accommodative. Wall Street scaled new highs driven by increasing certainty the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates next month. Japan's Nikkei broke through the 43,000 level for the first time and cryptocurrency Ether rose to an almost 4-year high. Let's have a look at financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 535. In Botswana, 13 pula 33. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 429. Zambia, 23 kwacha 14. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 shrill 42. In Russia, 79 rubles 58. India, 87 rupee 63, China 71.18, South Africa 17 rand 65 cents. $1 is 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Taking a look at commodities, gold is at $3,349, platinum at $1,336 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil $66.17 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 117144459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC, is pleased to announce the launch of the new self-registration platform. Vendors wishing to do business with the SABC can self-register on our internally developed platform. Vendors are able to access this platform on our website, which is www.sabc.co.za/SABC, and click under e-tenders, or self-register at etender.sabc.co.za and follow the prompts. Visit SABC social media pages for more detail.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
South Africa's Minister of Higher Education, Buti Manamela, has outlined a clear vision to revitalize the post-school education and training sector. Speaking at a media briefing in Pretoria, Manamela emphasized the urgent need to restore trust, improve responsiveness to communities, and address long-standing challenges within the department. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe has more on this story.
Buti Manamela was appointed on July 21st as South Africa's Higher Education Minister following the removal of his predecessor, Dr. Nobuhle Nkabane, who was accused of unlawfully appointing Sector Education and Training Authority board members. Speaking to the media, Manamela has called for bold reforms and collaboration to unlock bottlenecks and build a more inclusive and effective education landscape, promising to change the department.
Our message is simple and straightforward. We have to get the department working. We have to make sure that the department is responsive to the communities out there. We have to make sure that we restore the trust deficits that may have been created by what has happened in the past on the department itself. And so part of the things that we're doing to engage with stakeholders, together with the deputy ministers, students, workers, and so on and so forth, as I indicated. Some of them who indicated that they've been looking forward to these engagements has been helpful in helping to restore the relationship between the ministry and our department together with those stakeholders. So moving forward, we're going to be working together with the entire team at the Department of Higher Education and Training.
The Minister of Higher Education and Training is responsible for appointing board members, including the chairperson, in consultation with the National Skills Authority. However, there has been recent controversy and scrutiny surrounding these appointments, particularly regarding transparency and potential political influence.
The nominations have since been closed. For the chairpersons, the nominations have since been closed. The team in the department is looking through those nominations to look at who meets the criteria And from those who have been nominated, we will then apply our minds in terms of who fits the positions required. We're going to make sure that people have the skills and the capacity to be able to preside as chairpersons of SITA boards. That is for us the most important criteria. We are quite considerate of the fact that, and rightly so, that the public would be looking at this closely, and we will not hide anything. I think what has happened in the past has been that, exactly lessons.
Furthermore, Manamela emphasized the need to align university levels and standards with TVET and community colleges levels.
We have an education system that is heavy at university level and quite lean when it comes to TVET and community colleges. We need to turn that around, and it's going to take a lot of courage and reimagining how this, the sector looks. There are certain bottlenecks that we need to unlock, with regards to university education, with regards to TVET education themselves. I mean, for instance, one of the major concerns that we've had when we're listening to constituencies and communities is our expectation of someone who passes their grade 12 and still be expected to, repeat some of those programs when they re-enter the system through the TVET colleges. And that's why we're moving with speed to strengthen some of the work that has been done in the form of, centers of specialization, in the form of occupational trades, in the form of phasing out the end courses so that we match the value that comes into TVET colleges. We believe that a lot has been done to put in the face of South Africans technical vocational education and training institutions.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
Now, for the first time in 13 years, Timbuktu is welcoming home its ancient manuscripts, precious texts that were smuggled to safety when militants captured the city in 2012. More than 4,000 were destroyed, but thousands more were saved through remarkable acts of courage by local custodians. Now, the first crates have begun the journey back to Timbuktu, a powerful moment for Mali's heritage. And joining us now is André Diarra, who's a Malian filmmaker, on a documentary about the evacuation, restoration, and the return of these manuscripts. André, bonjour, ça va?
Bonjour, good morning, how are you?
Je vais très bien, merci. We're very well, thank you so much. Tell me, this must be a wonderful moment for the people of Mali and in Timbuktu especially. How are they feeling about these manuscripts returning home after 13 years?
It's amazing because first, thank you to give me this opportunity to speak about manuscript. It's not all the time easy for us to speak about this knowledge. The manuscript, it's important to note that this heritage first left the city of Timbuktu when they had a whole story. And we cannot talk about Timbuktu without talking of manuscript, vice versa, and vice versa. The return of a manuscript is truly beneficial for all Malians and also for the international community, given the knowledge and the know-how they contain. Because the manuscript, it's a lot of domain about science, about literature, a lot of knowledge. And people are very happy about this. They were waiting for it because there is a big link with those families and the manuscript.
I believe more than 4,000 manuscripts were destroyed. Do we know what kind of knowledge we lost in the process as a result of these pages being destroyed?
Yeah, the manuscript is over dating back to the 11th century. The date's very different. It's very different type of manuscript, but most of them, it's about science and literature. And there is also the manuscript talking about the rights. And also there is a lot of manuscript about the story of the communities living there, and also about the power of the city at this time.
You've decided to do a documentary, a film about this. Tell us why you decided to make such an important film.
As a Malian, I heard about the manuscript my first time. It was 2006. And when I went to Tombouctou, and I was at a visit in Saint Ahmed Baba, I was surprised about this manuscript, and I would think that they only speak about Islamic. I'm a Christian from the south of Mali, and I was surprised when the guide said that this manuscript telling about Mali's story. You know, when in primary school, we talk about Mali's story, but we never talk about this manuscript. We can talk about Musa, Kanku Musa, and other things, but never I have heard about this manuscript. So I was surprised. And after my first film, I was thinking about the next step for me. And yes, it was in 2012, 13. And it was also during the war in the north of Mali, and I heard about that, and I was very depressed, and I said, this story, I have to make it. And I started to make some research. You know, it's a big story, and I was taking my time to have all the information I could have, so I can know in which angle I can do my documentary. So this film is not only about the story, but it's also about the content of the manuscript. The story of Africa was written by colonizator. Sorry for my English. And I think each generation has a role to play. And I'm convinced that our is to redefine the story of manuscript, the story of our ancestor, and the story of Africa. This film is beyond all else a statement of contribution of Black Africa to the world story.
I believe that these manuscripts were preserved, and it was through the bravery of some people that took a risk in preserving them. Does that come through in your film?
Yeah, in my film, I'm not only the story can be talked about some expert, because it's also a story of a manuscript. I can talk about, in my film, I can talk about manuscript without talk about this step of the story of manuscript, because it's also a part of a story. And the return of a manuscript in Tombouctou is also on part of a story of a manuscript. So I think that is very important to have this in the film, and people will know what's happened, because it's not the first time that Tombouctou of the manuscript was attack. I think in the 16th century, if I'm right, 16th century, yeah, there were the invasion of Morocco, and after in 1890, sorry.
Right. Okay.
1890.
Mon frère. We don't have time anymore, so I just want to say thank you so much. Merci pour votre temps. Merci aussi pour réaliser cet film. Bonne chance dans la future.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. And yeah, I hope my English was well.
Non, c'était très très bon.
We are
J'espère que mon français c'est bon aussi.
Oui, c'est parfait, c'est parfait.
Merci. Au revoir. À bientôt.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That's Andre, filmmaker from Mali, important film, talking about the manuscripts that were saved. My colleagues, Palisa and Benjamin, are in studio to very briefly tell us what we can look forward to with excitement and zeal on the move.
Bonjour. That's about it. Yeah, definitely with some excitement and zeal. Today we're speaking about a growing trend where, because people are moving away from like the rural spaces and coming into the city, there's still a huge demand for getting fresh produce, and as more people try and get healthy, there's a big trend of reshaping urban landscaping. So people are planting on their balconies. People are making sure that they're using their small spaces to still get that fresh produce
Nice.
and plant it themselves. That's going to be quite interesting.
Asanda, you want to join us for that conversation? I know
Vertical farming, yeah,
Yes.
that sounds
I
very
know
much
you
up
love
my
farming.
alley.
Yeah, join us from 9 to midday Central African time right here on Channel Africa.
Great.
It's 9 o'clock. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Let's do it again tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. Central African time. I'm Peter Ndoro.
I'm Asanda Beda. Goodbye, guys.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Looking at your top stories this hour. Burkina Faso sentences 13 people to life imprisonment for acts of terrorism, and Ukraine continues to fight for parts of its territory. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. Burkina Faso has sentenced 13 people to life imprisonment for acts of terrorism, including a 2018 attack against the French embassy. More than 60 others were given lesser jail terms. This is according to an official statement released yesterday by a specialist